Call the meeting to order, and thank you all for being here tonight. It's exciting to kick off the evening with our pledge, Ms. Kraft.
Good evening. Tonight, I would like to welcome
Graham Miller.
Graham Miller, and Graham loves to play baseball. He plays on a select team, and he plays 4 or 5 nights a week between practices and games. He's an amazing student, and he also is known for his awesome hair at school. So everybody's like, oh, that's Graham. So he's going to lead us in the pledge tonight.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one indivisible.
Graham, thank you very much. It says that you are an aspiring Major League Baseball player, so I might need to get your autograph before you get away. Thank you for being here. Great job. Our next item tonight is roll call. Let the roll reflect that all board members are present. And item 5, recognitions. Mr. Parker.
Good evening. We, as you can tell by the size of the crowd tonight, we've had some success in Lovejoy ISD recently, very recently. And I got to meet with some groups this morning. And one of the things that I mentioned is success in this district is not siloed into one area. It's when our kids go and compete, they're successful. And it's because of the work that they put in, the support by their parents, and the leadership of our coaches and our directors. And we get to recognize some of that tonight. So we're going to do both athletics and fine arts because those are the 2 areas and groups that we are going to recognize tonight. I'm going to invite Coach Ross up here to introduce a couple of his coaches.
All right, I'm going to start with swimming. So I'd like Coach Sagahorn to come up here. And I'm going to talk briefly about Coach. I'm going to let Coach brag on his kids. I want to brag on Coach. Record-setting year right off the bat, so you have no place to go but down. I don't know what to tell you. Right off the bat, your work ethic, your commitment, and the culture that you came in. And we already had a great program, but what you've done in such a short time is incredible. And we appreciate your hard efforts. Thank you very much.
Hey, thank you all very much. I do not like to be in the limelight, so I appreciate everything that this district has given me and our team the opportunity to achieve this year. And speaking of, we're here because of them. They're absolutely amazing, and I would like to invite them up. Let's just go ahead and stand up here so everyone can see you. First, we have Emerson Dingworth. She's our senior, one of our seniors and captain of the swim team. She is absolutely amazing, has been such a great leader on this team, definitely taking care of me and sending out messages, not only that, but training and motivating her team to do absolutely the best. We have freshman Ava Easley, who came in this year. She is one of the hardest workers I've seen. Maria Faro. She is our diver. She won state. As a freshman, she set our pool record, breaking her sister's old record. She has continuously done nothing but been short of amazing. She is, if you've never seen her dive, I highly suggest you come out there and watch her. Next, we have Devin Carris. She is our junior captain on the swim team. You'll hear me say hard worker quite a lot, and she is definitely one of them. Always humble and always listens. Her sister, Reagan Carris, another senior on our team. Absolutely amazing worker and a delight to be around. We have Heidi Porter, junior on our swim team. Always humble. I don't think I've ever heard anything negative come out of her mouth. She must not talk loudly around me then. Cameron Sperling, her partner in crime. Cameron is absolutely a wonder to be in the pool with, just positive, and always cheering on her team and achieving for the best. Julia Stahl. Julia's one of the, again, hardest workers on the team. She knows no bounds when it comes to determination. Grant Hugh. Grant Hugh is another record breaker on our team. He finished second overall at state and in his 500-yard freestyle and third place overall in his 200 individual medley. If you've never seen him swim, it's probably because he's too fast. Bennett Dingworth. Absolutely proud of this young man. He is one of our senior captains on our team. He continues to impress me through his character and his wise decisions and always putting others before himself. Riley McGowan. You probably know this man. He's up here quite a lot. He's also participates in cross country, an outstanding athlete and a great young man. We have Chris Pages. Absolutely humble, will never brag about himself. Okay, sorry, that's a lie. Chris is always a treat to be around. Such a great character, and he's so much fun. And then Jacob Pierce. He's another senior captain, and it's going to be awfully hard to see this one go. Thank you all very much. Thank you, seniors. Thank you for such an amazing year. Stay right there.
Next, we have Coach Mike Eaton, Coach Tischer. They're here to recognize not only our individual state champions, but our boys state champion, 5A state champs. How about that as a team? Incredible. I'm going to say a couple words here about Coach because he'll never do it. But the program that these guys have built, it obviously was tremendous this year. It wasn't just this year. It's something that has been for years. They built this. Their hard work, their desire, their commitment to these kids, along with their leadership that inspired these young guys. I watched what they did. The work ethic that they do, y'all know this, it's year-round. It never really stops. These experiences, these moments that they're having, they don't happen without your leadership. So thank you so much, guys. Appreciate it.
So we've got a couple different groups we're going to honor up here. We're going to call up our women's wrestling group that made it to the state tournaments. We have 2 wrestlers right now. So Avery and Juliana, you guys want to come up first? So Julie is our freshman wrestler and really came along this year as a freshman and in the district and region tournament, just really got on a roll and made her way all the way to the state tournament and won 2 matches at state and what we call the blood round. Lost her last match, which if she wins that, she places. So very close to being a state placer as a freshman. So real excited about Julie and her next 3 years in our program. So Juliana LaForte is the first one. I'll give her a hand for that there. And then Avery here, she's been up here for 4 straight years. So I know some of you guys here, they're looking around like you think we've tricked it a little bit and got a 5-year deal on this, but she's been coming to these meetings for 4 straight years. She just won her 2nd state championship and probably put together probably one of the best years you could. She was 46-0 with only 1 match that did not go with what we call bonus points. So she had 1 match that she won by only 7 points. So state tournament, I don't know, Coach Ross, I don't know what you want to do, but she scored over 20 points in every match state tournament. So I know you guys are pretty high scoring too, but 3 touchdowns a match is pretty impressive. So in this, so she dominated. So to have her, finish this year and win again in style, won by like 10 points in the final, and she'll be wrestling next year for OCU up in Oklahoma City. So you guys will hear about her, and I don't think you'll be done hearing about her for a few years. So congratulations, Avery. I'm going to ask, first of all, the first guys up here, since we have certificates for them, our 9 men, I think we've got 8 here today. We got 1 that's kind of grinding away, but the 9 guys that wrestled in the state tournament, come on up first. I think there's 8 here right now. We're going to hand out certificates, so I'm going to talk about you as you come up. I am going to do something a little different here. We're going to talk about these 8 here that are present, because these guys obviously specifically helped win that state tournament, but we've got several other men that are sitting down there. We did something kind of special this year I'll talk about when I get done with these individuals here. So, Coach, you can start handing them out. I don't need you. Don't just hand them out. Oh, you're okay. Okay. So Mercer Ashley is our first one. This is alphabetically. So Mercer's a sophomore. Yeah, he's got the same last name as Avery, and he's a pretty tough kid too. Mercer this year was first at district and first at regionals, was a regional champ, and he won a match at state. So he's only a sophomore. He'll be coming back. Mercer. Next in the list is Austin Blair. Austin's one of our seniors. Austin was a state placer last year, came back this year and placed 6th as a junior, but this year placed 3rd and really was pivotal to us winning a state championship as a team. So Austin Blair. Next is Andrew Kotecki. Andrew's another one of our sophomores. Andrew this year wrestled in the state tournament, I believe was 2nd at district and 4th at regionals. But again, another sophomore that's going to come back with lots of experience. Andrew. Next is Jackson Lambert. Jackson's one of our juniors in the program. Come on up here, Jackson. Jackson was a state placer last year, a sophomore, and he, just like Julie, lost his last match. He was in the blood round, 1 match away from placing, but had some critical points that counted towards our team state championship. So Jackson Lambert. Next one is Peyton Pierce. Don't really recognize him. He got a haircut since the state tournament last week, so I'm not sure. I think he's was it Samson with the hair? I don't know who it was, but the longer hair, he was a little more intimidating than a week ago. So, but as a sophomore, Peyton came in and he was one of our 2 state champs. Had an awesome run. We didn't get him back with us right away. He had some injuries, but he ended up being 13-0 and won a state title and just an awesome tournament. Peyton Pierce. Our next, and also he's a sophomore. Next sophomore is Sam Reynolds. Sam was also one of our state champions. Sam wrestled most of the year for us, got a little more time in, but man, Sam had a couple great tournaments. He actually lost in the district final. Tough match, lost in the regional final, was really upset, but we kept telling him, coach told him, hey, nobody's going to care what happened with that when you get your hand raised at state. And sure enough, probably one of the most exciting matches we've seen at heavyweight in a while, but he wins the match really was losing with 9 seconds to go, got the tying point, and then the winning 2 points with basically less than a second to go to win. So Sam Reynolds, state champ. Tyler Smith, another senior of ours. Tyler was 3rd in district and 4th at regionals, and he wrestled in the state tournament. Another good senior with a great year for us. Tyler Smith. We've got Corey Solis, our junior. Corey was 2nd at district and 2nd at regional, and he also wrestled in the state tournament. He had kind of wrestled through some injuries and probably not quite 100%, so we're excited to get him back to 100 for his senior year. Corey Solis. So we have one that's missing today. I had to work with his dad a little bit, Isaiah Hunter. I'm going to say something about him because I know it's maybe being recorded or not. But Isaiah was a district champ, region champ, and he also placed 3rd in state, had some great matches, and was pivotal in the scoring for our team title. So we won the team championship with these young men here, but we won that championship. A lot of these guys worked with partners. We also won something called the dual state championship back in January 22nd, where your whole team goes against other teams. So it's something we've never done. So I'm going to invite all those men to come up here, please, right now. And we're going to let them get in the picture too. So these guys are critical. Real quick, guys, I'm just going to kind of say your name as I see, and you guys can just step forward and raise your hand real quick. So we have Reed Jacob, Lucas Dresser. We'll go with you, Kyle McClure. He's standing behind there. Going to go with Dalton Hart, Braxton Obel, Elijah Strand, Hayden Stubblefield, and Jackson DeBree. We do have one more sitting back. I don't know if she wants to come up here. We got our manager, Emma Blair. Come on up, Emma. So again, we've been coming to this. This is my 10th year here, and every year I've come, I keep asking. Now I know, Ms. Cordell, you're new this year, but I've asked every year if we ever win a state title, can we go first? So I didn't get a chance to tell you that yet, so I'm sorry, but we've been working on it. We're going to win it again next year. So we're going to be pretty good next year, so we'll be back. But I'm just excited to have this group. I say this every year, and I need to do it again, but these guys wouldn't be here. Coaches wouldn't be here if it wasn't for our parents that are here. So I'm going to just ask our parents to stand up, please. All our wrestling parents. If you don't know wrestling, it is a big investment. It's definitely a family sport. You can't do it. You can't be part-time. So having our parents be so supportive of us coaches, of their sons and daughters, it's just huge. So we thank you, everybody, for the support. Our parents, obviously our coaches. I don't know how it's going to work for our, we talked about a lot of staffing issues. I have 2 new coaches on our staff, Coach Ross and Coach Park. We're down at every tournament. So in reality, I thought I'd have to come and see you because Coach Ross was yelling some things back at the ref a couple times, and I thought I was going to get blamed on it. So anyways, Coach Ross was there, Coach Park was there. We've had some awesome guys there just helping us out all the way. And I'd be remiss not to say this. Obviously, to my right, Coach Tischer here. We'll give him a hand real quick. And Coach Evans directly behind me, too. Thank you guys very much.
Go by the weight you rest. Go by the weight you rest. Not where you are now.
Good job, Coach.
Now we would like to move over to our fine arts department, and to introduce our fine arts programs, we have Dr. Fella Matthew.
It is always such a great pleasure to come and see our trustees and our community when we have such wonderful things to celebrate in fine arts. Tonight we have 3 groups of students, and I would say these 3 groups of students all embody the definition of grit, where the courage and the determination to accomplish a really important goal, no matter what kind of circumstances stand in their way, they have defined that by being here this evening. A unique characteristic that they all 3 share is that their goals started last summer. Another characteristic is that all 3 groups are in programs that are year-round programs. They are all also excellent academic students, but let's get to honoring the students this evening. The first group student we'd like to acknowledge is in our choir program, and as Ms. D'Souza and Ms. Cozy comes up, Ms. D'Souza, you get to come up. Ms. D'Souza and Ms. Koziatek are the directors of our choir program, and like our kids, they have a really full plate. Tonight, we're going to honor our all-state band and choir students. A cool thing about this is that it's something on top of everything else that they already do. For those of you that know a lot more about athletics than fine arts, the process of all-state would be like a playoff game. You get to keep advancing through a number of rounds in order to get to state. And from the very beginning, all the way until they make state, these directors are holding their hand and making sure that they accomplish the goals that they have set for themselves. Our choir program is an outstanding music program here in the district, and we're very excited to showcase just a moment of excellence tonight.
Hello, I am Kathy Kotecki. I'm the LHS choir director, and I'm so pleased to work with Kelly D'Souza, who is also a former student of mine and former Texas All-State choir member. So, this is an exciting evening. Many of you know Aiden Abramson as Troy Bolton from our recent production of High School Musical, and his talent is undeniable. But what you may not know is that in addition to being a fantastic pop singer, Aiden is also an incredible classical singer. And it is this style of singing that earned Aiden a place in the Texas All-State Large School Mixed Choir, the highest honor that can be bestowed upon a high school choir student. Aiden earned this honor, something achieved by only 1% of high school music students in Texas, not simply through talent, but by grit, determination, and consistent hard work. The road to All-State is a grueling process that begins in July and concludes in February after 3 very competitive auditions that include learning and performing 11 choral masterworks and sight reading that gets more rigorous at each round of auditions. Aiden consistently rose to the top among 6A choir students, not only 5A choir students, through this process, and that is something that doesn't happen easily or by accident. So congratulations, Aiden. I'm so pleased to recognize your achievement through countless hours of practice, voice lessons, and focused hard work to earn a place in the Texas All-State Large School Mixed Choir.
Yeah.
Mr. Hoyer will make his way up. Our next group of students to recognize are our all-state students in band. As I mentioned earlier, all of our programs, this is in addition to all the things they have done. So if you recall, this was our year to compete in marching UIL, and we got all the way through to area. We're now into concert season. So in addition to all these other things our kids are doing, these individuals have accomplished the state level of All-State as well. Mr. Hoyer.
Thank you for having me tonight. Again, I'm Paul Hoyer, Director of Bands at Lovejoy High School. Like Ms. Matthews said, we see on Friday nights, you see in our concert halls, the group of the band program as a whole, and how we, so much of what we do is collaborative and putting things together as a group. This is the other side of that. Great bands are made out of great players. We are super proud. This is our second year in a row to have 10 All-Staters in the All-State band. One 6A school ended up having more than us, but as far as 5A goes, Lovejoy was right at the top of that. So we are super proud of what our kids are able to do and then what that brings to the community and to the band program. If I could have all of our All-Staters that are here come up to the front, please. I'll make them stand there while I talk about them a little bit. Stare awkwardly. Our first one I will announce is Chris DeShant. Chris is we can clap for him. Chris is a 3-year All-Stater now at this point. Had the rare case of making All-State as a freshman. Obviously, you come in instantly competing with kids who have just played at 4 years longer than you. That's a very rare thing to happen. And Chris has done that. And this is now his 3rd time, looking for the 4th time next year. But he is at the very top of what he's doing. And the other part of that, as if making 5A All-State is not difficult enough. Some of our students choose to go the 6A route, which is kind of a rarity that they can choose to opt up into the higher class. And Chris actually chose to do that after making first chair All-State 5A clarinet, and then moved up and is in the 6A All-State band. So again, Chris DeShant. Our next student is Grayson Monroe. Interesting note about Grayson. Grayson came to us as a bass clarinet player and made All-State, practically could have made it as a freshman, but made it as a sophomore and a junior on bass clarinet. And then his senior year, looking towards college, was like, I'll go ahead and try it on soprano clarinet, and entered sort of a bigger field of players and went ahead and made All-State on bass clarinet this year too. So another big accomplishment for him. Neelish Iyer is one of a few of, sorry. Neelish is a 2-year All-State member, and I'm proud to say he was one of our first chair All-State. So literally the best euphonium player in the state. So thank you, Neelish. John Hanchy. John is a fantastic drum set player for us, and was very close to making the All-State band on drum set first, and went ahead and made All-State on percussion this year for us. And we're super proud of him. And then leading on for John, Andrew James. We're super proud of Andrew. Andrew's another All-State percussionist, and this is his 2nd year making All-State percussion. And I believe, Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong, were you the first percussionist at Lovejoy to make the All-State band, which is a really cool accomplishment. Another multiple year All-State student, Emma Ball. Emma is a fantastic oboe player and is another first chair All-State performer. And Reagan Wagner. Reagan was a freshman All-State member last year on trumpet and now made it again as a sophomore. So she is on her way to the coveted four-year All-Stater. If you make it your freshman year, you have a pretty good shot of keeping in there each year because she only gets better and better. So congrats. With a few students, you know how busy everybody is with work and then even other activities. We had second chair alto sax in the state, Aaliyah Book, second chair jazz trombone in the state, Dom Mariello, and fourth chair flute in the state, also a freshman, Kevin Zhang, that we're not able to be here with us tonight. Oh, yeah. Great job.
As they are taking their seats, one of the neat opportunities I have in floating around different campuses is that sometimes you'll go to the high school and someone will be playing an instrument in the band hall or a student will be singing and you're thinking, God, who is that professional? I wonder what clinician they brought in today. And then you walk in and it's one of these kids and it's just, it takes your breath away at how unbelievably beautifully these students can play and sing and how incredibly talented they are. So it is such an honor to have them here this evening. My last group, and they will not know the meaning of quietly because that's not their role in our district, but cheerleaders, if you will quietly come up to the front and Coach Wiggins come join us. Our cheerleaders have also, as I said, have been working since the summer to prepare for UIL Spirit. One of the neat things that we have in our district is we have been able to watch UIL Spirit grow since they were really little 8th grade cheerleaders. So they have been a part of this process from the very beginning. And to watch the role that Lovejoy has taken among the UIL Spirit competition is pretty incredible. From half the squads across Texas copying our uniforms to seeing some of our moves on stage or on the mat. It's been incredible to see how this particular squad has really influenced what high school cheerleading at the competitive level looks like for the UIL competition. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Coach Wiggins.
Hello. And so the girls went to UIL in January and they have to compete in a prelims and a finals. And so in prelims, they do 3 separate categories: band chant, fight song, and crowd leading. So out of 72 teams, in the first round, they got 16th in crowd leading, 5th in band chant, and 2nd in fight song, which had them 6th overall. And our ultimate goal was to get a medal because this is they've placed bronze and silver the past 2 years. So that was our first goal. And so they kind of cleaned some things up in between. And in finals, they received 3rd in crowd leading, 2nd in fight song, and 2nd in band chant. And they placed 3rd overall, and they were just a 10th away from 2nd place. So they were, which out of 100 points, just a 10th, it's like basically a tie. They're amazing. They schedule a lot of they deal with a lot of schedules during the time when they're preparing. They're doing football playoffs, which our football team went really far, and volleyball and basketball. So it's hard for them to find time to practice, but they work hard and they're amazing. So, and it's our first year to finish in the top 10 out of 550 teams. We finished 8th out of all the A's of the schools. So they're awesome. Okay, so Addison Smith. Ainsley Abernathy. Alexis Lambert. Ann Claire Hannah. Avery Taylor. Brianna Seidel. They're waiting for me to mess up a name. They were talking to me about it. Cheney Roberts. Darby Anderson, Finley Abernathy, Gabby Grazioli, Caitlin Warren, Carson Slaughter, Catherine Hanna, Mia Nowak, Olivia Lauder, Olivia Miller, Rachel Dobbs, Sydney Thompson, Taylor Kate Pickett, Taylor Reiner, Viviana Yerkes. And there's several that were not here tonight due to schedules, but this is a very young group as well. There's several freshmen and sophomores on here, so we're looking forward to being great next year again. So, Jim, take her.
What's this? What was all that? You got it clear? Ah, got it. Certainly one of the most enjoyable things we do is recognizing the kids for their accomplishments and their hard work. So super fun to be doing that. Great job. And thank you all for being here to support them. Our next item is item 6. It's public comments related to agenda items. And just a few reminders. One is you have 3 minutes to speak when you come up. We will let you know when you've gone to 1 minute. Stop speaking at 3, please, and move forward at that point. When you come up, give your name and your agenda item you're speaking about, please. And as always, no disruptions. Disruptions are a broad range of things: verbal utterances, making faces, disrupting the speaker. All those things are disruptions, and we're not going to tolerate any of that. I'm not going to read you the legal jargon. You have that in your package. But if you do, then I'm going to stop you or I'll remove you from the meeting. It is a criminal offense to disrupt a meeting, just so you know. You have 3 minutes to speak. And tonight we have folks who signed up to speak about GT. You signed up under item 16. I'm going to go ahead and let you speak for agenda items, but in the future, unless it's stated in the agenda or in the presentation, it's not an agenda item. It's a non-agenda item. I'm going to go ahead and let you speak tonight during the agenda section, but in the future, just know that you may not be able to speak if it's not specifically in our board book or called out in the agenda. Okay? So with that, who is our first public speaker this evening?
Tanya Donahue.
Tanya Donahue. Can we pull the mic to the front? That's far enough.
Speaking to them.
Just spin that around so you can.
Yeah, speak to you, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Good evening, and I will be very brief. I just had a few points that I wanted to make. My name is Tanya Donahue. I'm a Lovejoy parent. I've had 2 grads, and I have a 9th grader right now. And I'm also an educator. And I was involved in the Early Foundation. I was a board member, and I've served on the Gifted Association as president and vice president in the past. So I have, as an educator, and I also do a lot of research and curriculum, I've really followed what Lovejoy has done and what has been created with our fantastic academics. And I'm currently in a doctoral program, and everything I read, I see us doing. There are best practices that we have. And I wanted to express my support, and I forgot to thank the board members and the administrators here. Thank you for giving us time to speak. I appreciate all that you do. And I know that this last year with the pandemic has been just awful. Thank you for hanging in there. I really appreciate it. So I wanted to just make some points just quickly. Lovejoy has created an award-winning academic system. And in one of my research, I discovered that that system began 16 years ago, I believe, something like that, with a look at the test scores of the students that we were going to have. And that look at the scores led to the creation of this fantastic program we have now. And as you know, 20% of our students, which is 850 or so students, are GT. And that is a lot of students for one program in the school district to have. One of the points I wanted to make is that Lovejoy is the standard. And I know that in reading, some things that are being considered with for changes to, and I understand the financial situation. I understand that very well. I'm actually in my 2nd doctoral finance class. And so I know the difficulties and the difficult decisions you have to make. But I encourage you to keep the standard that we have created. I know that there's a tendency in education to go and find what other school districts are doing, but these other school districts we might look at may offer a lot less with the GT program and with the academics that we have. So we're the standard, and I just encourage us to, to remember that. One of the things, and I may be overstepping a little, but the present system that we have, and I know this from my own children, that they are in full GT classes from 3rd grade on. And I know that the classes are full. And so, again, I don't know all the ins and outs of that, but I encourage that we look at if the students are already in full GT classes, then perhaps reducing the number of GT teachers, will end up with us having to hire other teachers to teach the GT students. So since the students are in sections, especially in 5th through 12th grade. I need to close up, sorry.
Time is up.
Time is up? Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I was trying to point that the sign was there. I wasn't telling you to. Okay. Yeah. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Tanya. There you go.
No, I didn't say that right.
Good evening. I'm Melanie Dykstra, and tonight I wanted to take a few minutes to explain how Lovejoy's GT program is different and why that's important to our district. I've been in the district for 8 years, and I have 3 boys in the GT program. I'm deeply involved in the Lovejoy Gifted Association and several of the national gifted organizations across Texas and the U.S. We currently have 4,343 students enrolled at Lovejoy. 855 students are currently served by the GT program. That's 19.7% of the student population. The average enrollment in GT programs in districts around us is 8 to 12%. And Lovejoy's qualification process is considered more rigorous. This tells us that people are moving to our district for our GT program. So what exactly makes our program so special that it's worth the personal and financial cost to move to Lovejoy and become part of this community? So there are 3 points. 1, early and universal identification. Gifted kids do not always look gifted. Universal identification can find gifted children with behavioral difficulties, learning differences. Gifted identification needs to be equitable and can save the lives of some of these children. Also, without the appropriate education in elementary school, gifted kids learn to deal with their boredom in inappropriate ways, which can plague them for the rest of their lives. Tragically, they often lose their interest in learning. The second area that's imperative for quality gifted education is a self-contained classroom, not a pullout. A self-contained classroom allows the curriculum to move at a faster pace. It allows the teacher to structure their lessons in ways that engage and challenge students by meeting them where they are. It also promotes friendships and helps students become more confident in their abilities. And then the third aspect is the necessity is having teachers and staff that truly understand gifted students. The quirks and struggles that threaten the success of gifted students are unique. While all of our teachers are outstanding, grasping the what and why of gifted behavior is invaluable in order to guide them to be good citizens of the world. These are 3 characteristics of our program that make us different, make Lovejoy better, and bring families to our community. There are so many more things I can say about how gifted kids are unique, why they need to be educated differently, and what we can do to be more efficient. But tonight's takeaway should be that the gifted program and its structure is distinct from other school districts, and that distinction is bringing us students. I honestly do not want to see a Lovejoy that begins to chip away at such an important part of our identity. Thank you.
Next up is my favorite MC, Joel Dykstra.
Hi. Good evening. My name is Jill Dykstra, and I'm a student in 6th grade at Sloan Creek. My mom has been talking about Lovejoy's budget cuts and asked me if I wanted to explain why I think our GT program is so important to kids, and I wanted to give you my perspective. I think I've always had different interests than most kids. When a lot of kids were playing soccer at recess in elementary school, I was finding rocks on the ground that symbolized character traits. When other kids were bouncing on the trampoline at home, I was setting up gambling tables in my front yard. For the first few years of elementary school, I was happy just doing things my own way. But in 2nd grade, school started to change for me. When I tried to start a business selling things at school, some kids would tell me I was weird and throw my things on the ground. Most of my days in 2nd grade were long days repeating things that I'd known since preschool. I spent my time reading novels under my desk and drawing on my arms and legs to keep myself busy. Eventually, I began dreading school every single day. I thought something was wrong with me because I couldn't focus on the topics and worksheets like everyone else. I would cry at night because I knew I had to go back again the next day. My parents took me to a neuropsych who told me I was highly gifted and depressed. The 2 things I looked forward to every week at school were art and my time in GT classes. When I was there, we got to do amazing fun activities that adults would say stretched my brain. I just knew it was finally not boring. It was in GT that I also met some of my best friends. We started playing together at recess and creating long, elaborate stories to pretend. They understood my sense of humor, and they always had interesting and funny things to tell me. Once I got to Sloan Creek, school changed for me again. I met more GT teachers that challenged me and taught me things I didn't already know. They helped me with things I struggled with because the first time I had ever struggled. They laughed at my cryptic jokes and made me confident of my capabilities again. These teachers get me in a way most teachers don't. Without these teachers and the friends that I've made in GT classes, I can't imagine how school would be for me. GT classes are a safe place for me to be myself and be seen for who I am, and I know that I'm not the only kid who feels this way. Please don't trivialize how important this program is to help gifted kids like me to love school and help them become the people that they were meant to be. Thank you for your time.
My name is Jill Lamping, and I have 3 Lovejoy gifted kids, a 2021 graduate, a junior, and an 8th grader. We moved to Lovejoy in 2012 for the GT program. After looking at other districts, as well as private schools, Lovejoy's GT program stood apart. The specialized instruction self-contained GT classroom from elementary through high school was a structure that I knew my boys needed, not only for the accelerated and advanced curriculum, but also for the peer group and the teachers who truly get GT kids and understand their quirks. In a GT classroom, students challenge each other, they ask provocative questions, and they find their people. But tonight I want to speak about the potential financial impact of restructuring Lovejoy's GT program. It was suggested by the TASB study that $500,000 can be changed by changing the format. I asked the board to look very critically at the assumptions that led to that conclusion. Beginning in 3rd grade, our GT students attend their core academic courses in a self-contained GT classroom. If that GT setting is removed, the students still need to be in a classroom with a teacher. Comparing the number of GT teachers at Lovejoy to Alamo Heights, a district that provides their GT students in grades 3 through 5 with 1 day per week of GT enrichment, is comparing apples to oranges. Of course, we have more GT-aligned teachers because our students spend more time in a GT classroom setting. But if those classes are fully utilized and the teachers have a full course load, then taking away a GT classroom just transfers those same students into a different classroom, also staffed by a teacher. At the high school, almost all of our GT teachers are also teaching non-GT sections. The suggested savings of $500,000 is based on a false equivalence. That is, comparing the percentage of GT students versus GT teachers in the peer district without accounting for the amount of time spent in a GT classroom setting and our overall teaching staff utilization and efficiency. I would also suggest that an important factor in the financial equation is the impact of families like ours leaving Lovejoy or not moving here with their GT kids in the first place. Our family, as well as many others, would not have moved here if Lovejoy's GT program looked like the norm. Some of those same families will start to look at other options if our GT program is significantly altered. I suggest the board look at our Lovejoy scholars and determine how many of those students are enrolled for GT services and ask yourselves if those same students will enroll next year if our program is the same as in neighboring districts. I can find an AP or advanced curriculum at any nearby district, but I have not found a GT program that rivals Lovejoy's nearby. We have a singular program for gifted education and families move here for it. Lovejoy created a program for gifted kids that is aligned with best practices and is critically important for 20% of our students. GT education is not a luxury item. Understand, please, that gifted education is about much more than curriculum or differentiated instruction. It's about meeting all of our kids' needs, emotional, social, and intellectual. Thank you. I'm Cassie Webb. I'm a guest educator at Puster Elementary. I have a first grade daughter at Puster in the GT program, but I speak as a professional tonight more than a parent because before starting a family and subbing for Lovejoy, I taught at high schools in New York City and in Austin, and in between I published research in and after grad school. And I promise this is relevant context to just underscore the impression that this elementary GT class really made on me. I understand that the board was presented on February 7th with an option to absorb 9 GT teachers to make some financial savings. So I wanted to highlight what might be the educational cost of this action. Last summer, I had the memorable privilege of subbing for Diane Dahl's 4th grade class at Puster. 9 and 10-year-olds completed multi-page encyclopedic reports on their assigned Indigenous tribe. Oh, how I wish the high schoolers that I taught had the skills of these 4th graders. The vocabulary, the clarity, the comprehensiveness, the thoughtful and intentional use of diagrams and charts. But this observation was most poignant when the day's work, was complete. Some of the students became engaged in a spontaneous debate of the significance of greenhouse gas sources. Soon the whole class was engaged. And if it weren't enough that these students were discussing a global challenge in their free time, what floored me wasn't what they were saying, but how they were saying it. Mrs. Dahl had been perfecting in them the art of active listening. Students were saying things like, I appreciate your point, and I hear you say, and I understand. Every student prefaced their thoughts with an affirming acknowledgement of the opposing viewpoint. Organically. The mutual respect that Mrs. Dahl had cultivated took my breath away. Every day, Mrs. Dahl disciples a room full of future influential adults who at age 10 are possibly more adult-like than many adults. I expected to teach, but I instead left being taught. Can you imagine how their GT education pays windfall dividends onto the non-GT students surrounding them in other classrooms? So much of education is peer collaboration. And lastly, as a parent, I'm so excited about this opportunity for GT for my first grader entering 3rd and 4th grade one day, hopefully her preschool sisters as well. Frankly, I hope I don't have to look elsewhere for it one day. Please consider my observations and keep the current number of GT teachers. All 9 fuel the Lovejoy legacy. Thank you so much.
Any others? Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for those comments tonight. And with that, please take a moment and bow your head and join me for our invocation. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for the evening, the opportunity to come together as a board and a community to work together, to do the hard work to ensure that we protect the future of our children, that we educate our children, and that we grow our community. Thank you, Lord, for these educators who give what they give to our children and to the process of educating. Thank you for each of the board members and staff here. Thank you for the parents and all that they do. We pray a prayer of hope and goodwill for Ukraine. We lift up all those in need and we ask for your forgiveness. In Christ's name, amen. All right, board notifications, Ms. Koenig. And I've known you a long time. I hope I pronounced your name correctly.
I did a phonics lesson the other day for everyone, so. OE says A. Yes, I am here to give you we had two resignations this past week for the school district that I am notifying you of. One was Crystal Hume. Her last day was February 24th. The other one's the end of the year, Chastity Anderson, one of our high school counselors.
Thank you, Ms. Koenig.
You're welcome.
All right, item 9 is our consent agenda. Board members, is there anything you would like pulled for further review tonight in the consent agenda? If there are none, I'd entertain a motion. So moved for approval. Chad Collins,
Second.
second Ann Smith, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Item 10, consider and act on a memorandum of understanding with Texas A&M University at Commerce for the Texas Learning Acceleration Supports Grant. Ms. Koenig. Exercise event.
Barrett, I did have one question. I didn't need the item pulled, but I had a question for clarification for Dr. Duplessis on her financial report on page 27.
Okay. What's the question?
There's a place that talks about variance from standard on percent of budget expended. I'm familiar with that section, Dr. Duplessis? So when I see those numbers on the variance from standard, is that just showing where we're below our expected targets at this point in the year? Page 27 of 233 on the board book. There's a line item down below where it says variance from standard, and I just didn't remember that before, and I just want to make sure I understood it.
Is that in the financial report?
In the financial report of the comparison of budget to actual expenditures.
That is an actual comparative budget. There may be a terminology change.
Okay, so when it says variance from standard, and like in the 199 fund, we're minus 4%, and then in the nutrition fund, it's minus 15%. That's something maybe in the future, in one of your presentations, you could help us understand what those numbers mean. Thank you.
Ready to move on?
Thank you.
Okay, I am actually presenting an MOU for you, Memorandum of Understanding. We are actually working on a T-Class Decision 5 grant. I'm going to explain it a little bit later tonight, but it's the residency program support. It's basically a student teaching program, and we can pay a resident like we did for student teaching for 1 full year. We're super excited about. We're hoping to get 4 to 6 from Texas A&M University Commerce. They will provide us $20,000 per residency, and they can use them for living expenses, books, whatever they need. But we also get an extra $5,000 for each resident that we take that we can use in other funds. We could pay the mentor teacher. We can use it for implementation, future implementation of the program. We're hoping by 24, 25 to establish a program that we can continue and sustain it. You're going to see a little bit more information later too. It's a great thing for us.
Absolutely, particularly given the shortage in
And teachers.
educators that all schools are
Recruiting.
facing. This helps secure a pipeline.
Yeah. It's a great recruiting. Yes, ma'am.
Do they offer payment of a internship with student teaching? They do.
Well, through this program, yes, that's exactly what they're doing.
So are they doing more of that? To
Well, it's a
incentivize?
1 year. It's a 1 year program. So basically, in the spring, we would start spring 2023. So in the spring, what would occur is they would be here. They do a 3-2. So Monday they have seminar and classes. They'd be here about 3 days a week, and then every once in a while they have to do webinars that first semester. And however, if they don't have something, we can use them, and we're going to write that in our job description. They can tutor, they can sub, they can do all. They can be a para. In there, those are some decisions we'll make. And then the second semester, of course, they'll be doing student teaching. However, they encourage us to, give them opportunities, once again, tutoring, but they're paid $20,000 for the year. One thing the state would like us to do after that year is to be able to sustain the program, and they ask that we try to do at least 1 residency. We're hoping though, because we have to recruit them, we're hoping to get 4 to 6 is what we've asked for.
So can I clarify? So
Yes, ma'am.
tonight you would like us to
For
approve
the
this.
MOU.
It would start next spring.
23.
Crazy to think that's 2023. And then the year long, they start spring, they conclude fall.
Correct. They
So
graduate in
It's not a
December.
school year, it's a calendar year.
It's a calendar year.
Okay.
And then if we had any openings, we were hoping, to retain them into positions and things like that. Yes,
Sounds great.
Sounds like a great opportunity for us.
it is a great opportunity.
I saw in the MOU, there's some supervision responsibilities, things like that. Who does that roll up through?
Well, basically, they'll be working with their cooperative teaching, very similar to what we do right now. The MOU is very similar to what we work with TMEU, where you'll see we'll bring a Decision 5 here probably next month, another MOU with Texas A&M Commerce that we're hoping to support too, mainly for retention and
So it
retaining.
shouldn't necessitate any additional resources? on
No,
our
not at
end.
all. Not at all.
Good question. Any other questions? If there are none, I'd entertain a motion.
We would have loved to have been paid to student
I
teach.
know, I get to take this.
Yes.
I move to approve the MOU as presented.
So moved, Jason James.
Second.
Second, Marvin Bobo. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, thank you. All right, Mr. Parker, consider and act on missed school day waiver for February 24th.
We got the election.
Oh.
That
already
little
crossed-
thing in
I
May.
just crossed that right off. Consider and act on the general election contract for the election services and the joint election order for May 7th, 2022. Kim Steiner.
Good evening. This evening, we are just bringing forward to you, we are going to be moving forward with having a election for our Board of Trustees on May 7th of 2022. At our January meeting, you approved said election. So now we would we are just asking you to approve the contract with Collin County that we had also previously discussed with you so that our superintendent can sign into contract and we can move forward with that election. Do y'all have any questions? You have been provided with the contract, the expenses.
Can you remind us, for the record, the cost of?
It's about $10,500 and it's an estimated expense.
Great. Any questions?
Not changed since the last meeting.
Collin County's estimate has not changed. It could change as some districts maybe don't need to hold elections. The fewer school districts and governances that hold elections, the more burden that puts on those of us that are holding the election. So it could change the end total when all said is all said and done, but that is what their estimate still is right now.
Any questions? Questions?
Move, we approve the contract.
So moved, Chad Collins.
Second.
Second, Ann Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Now you're up, Mr. Parker. Consider and act on the missed school day waiver for February 24th, 2022.
So last week we had our third inclement weather day. And the first two, as you will recall, we are going to make up one of those days on April 18th. The other one we've added, we turned a half day a couple weeks ago into a full day, and we're adding three minutes onto our school days to make up that second day. For the third day, the state allows us to apply for a waiver day only after we have exhausted those other two options. So instead of making that day up, with your approval, we can apply to the state for a waiver day. There are some financial implications to this. The financial implications are we would lose 1 day of state funding for ADA. In order to mitigate that, if we were to choose a day and we were to make up that day, we would have to have at least 94% of our students in attendance. So I don't know how likely it is for us to choose a day in the remainder of the year and expect 94% of our students to be in attendance after they've made plans to go on vacation or whatever the plans may be. So again, we're asking that you guys consider and then consider us making our applying for a waiver day from the state.
Where does that 94% number come from? How's that calculated?
That is calculated just on our average daily attendance. So what we have, basically what we have averaged so far this year.
So I guess what you're saying is if we didn't apply for the waiver, we made up the school day and everybody decided to go do what they had already planned to do, and we didn't hit 94%, we wouldn't get that day of funding back. Is that what I'm hearing?
Ask that again, Jeff.
Yeah, so we can apply for the waiver, lose 1 day of ADA.
That's right.
Or we can reschedule the day somewhere else in the calendar. But if we don't hit 94%, we spin our wheels and we don't get that day of funding back?
We would not get the day of funding back. We would get less than what that 94% is. Does that make sense?
I'm going to let Jennifer jump in because it does come into the finance formula and the way that we're funded. And some of it has to do with, at the end, there's a low attendance day waiver, but I'll let her get into the technicalities.
So basically the calculation is going to average your percentage out for the number of days that you were in session. So it's hard to tell what would happen if we remove a day from that calculation. But if there's a fair assumption that our percentage of attendance would be lower, then it's better to essentially remove that day and not try to make it up. If it's going to be at a lower percentage rate, then it's going to draw down the rest of our attendance.
So is it because we anticipate that calculation on the last however many weeks it is that we have to look at, and that's going to be adding minutes or funding potentially back to us if we hit a certain level? This is a danger of reducing that. Is that different than the day of ADA, or is it?
It's based on it. It's just purely based on your average daily attendance. So the minutes don't come into play necessarily.
That's not part of that waiver that they're.
The waiver
that's
is
separate.
No longer in play according to TEA.
Oh.
That's CAPR waiver. So they're assessing the situation and trying to determine what they're going to do for ADA. But essentially, it's number of days that you have instruction and that percentage rate. So it's kind of a gamble, but most times school districts experience a far lower attendance percentage on a makeup day.
Which then hurts your overall
Which
funding.
then reduces your ADA.
It reduces the percentage. So again, how does that affect the bottom line funding?
So they're going to take your total number of days. So if we get a waiver, that day is taken out.
Right, understand that.
It's better for the average.
If we go back and do it on another day, if that attendance day is a lower attendance percentage, then it's just going to add an additional day into that calculation.
There's got to be a break. The break even is what you're looking at. There's the percentage being down, even if you have one less day or
So the 94% is going to help us maintain what we have right now. If we went down below 94, it's going to pull down our average day.
We have 70% attendance that day. Our average would go to 90.
And even that extra day doesn't make up the difference.
Yeah.
That's any concerns on the days? I mean, if we've missed 3 days so far, some of those are being made up with small number of minutes in the day. Are there concerns from a curriculum standpoint that we need to be thinking about with lost time, or if there's any other days to come? I mean, at some point, we can't just keep not having days. At some point, there's got to be a limit to that, right, from an instructional standpoint. If we were to have additional weather days, I don't know how likely that is for ICE anymore, but if there are things. I mean, what are the days we would add at some point if we needed to?
Well, I think that's where we're getting into later on in the school year. And so the later you get into the school year, the less options, the fewer options that you have on where you're going to make up that day. I mean, I guess you could tack it on that first week of June. I don't know. I mean, but at some point you're just trying to pick a day just to pick a day. And so I don't know how advantageous it would be curricularly if we were to do that.
Doesn't sound like we have any other good options.
Or you make a holiday the day, but people are already going to be on their trip and not come to school. So
Attendance is
that's
really the issue. If you add the days,
Yeah.
they're not going to attend.
That's
And
right.
so the argument about lost educational time is.
Even when we have scheduled school days before a holiday,
Like
we
this
don't
Friday.
get 94%. So for us to just choose a day and expect 94% of our students to be in attendance is highly unlikely.
Right. Those are good questions though to vet out. So
At some point there has, I mean, if we had some other type of weather event or disaster that created a loss of another extended period, those are things we have to plan for, I think. So,
But,
I will say, as an instructional leader and looking at the entirety of a school year, what we really want to focus on is making sure we're maximizing every instructional day and that our instructional days have as much integrity and fidelity as possible for our students, because when we do that, that impact on our students over time is what is going to be the most significant. And you're absolutely, we have to monitor that concern, but we also have really strong ability because of our teachers to compact some of that curriculum. They do a great job with formatively assessing to make sure that we're not being redundant with things that our students already know, and making sure we're building from there. And so we have confidence that with the amount of time that we have missed, that they will be able to do that. But you're absolutely right. That is something that needs to be weighted very seriously and considered each time we're confronted with some missed instructional time.
the missed days are no different than the absences, by the way. The number of absences before or after holidays, bookending those weekends are just as critical as a bad weather day. So.
Are we making progress with, so I know there were efforts, and I don't want to get too far off topic, but attendance on driving attendance, I know that may be something for a future meeting to get a follow-up on if we're seeing progress on those different campuses and their efforts to drive attendance.
Our numbers have gotten better, our ADA. We get a report every day, and we're going to put those numbers in front of our community through our principal communication on a weekly basis, so they're more aware of what our numbers are as well. Our community tends to get a little competitive from campus to campus, so we think, you know, maybe if we put the numbers, that'll inspire them to be in school every day.
That's great. So the request is to consider an act on a missed school day waiver. So moved. So moved, Marvin Bobo.
Second.
Second, Amy Smith. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Consider item 13, consider and act on emergency closure pay for district employees for shortened workday on February 23rd and full workday on February 24th. Mr. Parker. Or Ms. Duplessis.
Good evening. I'm going to try to start using my screen and less paper. So thank you for your consideration of this item this evening. We are looking at requesting to use our provision in board policy to consider Thursday when we have our inclement weather closure, as well as a few hours on Wednesday afternoon when we had staff that might have lived further from the district, that we gave them an opportunity to leave a couple hours early just to arrive home safely. So our board policy does allow us to consider making employees whole by not withholding their pay for those days. Say, for example, if they left a couple hours early and are hourly, or if on Thursday we don't have a technical makeup day within the calendar because of the challenges that you just discussed related to attendance or rescheduling that school day. So that is what we have before you this evening for consideration on this item.
Is this the same thing we did one time already previously?
That's correct.
Correct.
And so we did include in the item as well that if are there, whatever makeup measurements there are for students, that of course our staff, instructional staff would reflect that as well.
And there's no financial impact because we've already budgeted to pay these individuals for those days. We sent them home or they couldn't get here. So we'd just be taking money from them that we've already budgeted.
That's absolutely right. So all these funds would already be budgeted, and this would just prevent us from lowering anybody's paycheck as a result of the inability to report during an inclement weather closure.
I move we approve.
So moved. Amy Smith. Who was the second?
Second.
Second, Jeff Wood. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. Ms. Koenig, item 14, Lovejoy Scholars update.
Okay, as you all know, we've gotten lots of interest about our Lovejoy Scholars, and I know you are going to make some decisions at the end of March, but I just wanted to share with you, I think in December, you saw this information when the Lovejoy Scholar program was started. The tuition back in 2013, 2014 was $8,000 for K through 6, $10,000 for 7 through 12. And then in 17, 18, it changed to $9,000, $11,000. And of course, last year we took just an application fee of $150. And I believe we had 331 Lovejoy Scholars there. Wanted to just pulling some data and some information. So I looked at private schools in our area and pulled some information of basically what they were charging for an application fee, which ran from $60 to $150, lots of other fees, everything from technology fees to building use fees, many different kinds of fees there listed there. And then of course by level, elementary, middle school, and high school. I think Lucas Christian was charging about $5,800 up to, I believe it was Trinity, up to about $25,000 a year. So it was just pulling some data and for a sense of awareness there in private schools. The next one, I was also looking, most districts call, they really don't look at it as a tuition base. They look more of as out-of-district transfers is what they call it. And there is a site, you can see many out-of-district transfers all over the state. Just was trying to pull a few in the area. Many districts like Allen does not take out-of-district transfers. McKinney doesn't. They don't take out-of-district transfers, but some of these did. And also looking at some smaller districts. Plano doesn't charge for them, but that's probably because their kids are aging up and aging out. They probably have some room in those elementary campuses. Wiley was 1,000 and 2,000. They had not made a determination exactly just yet for this year when I spoke with them. So there's some information there for you. So what I did is we went and we looked at the last year, of course, the 331 scholars and basically what our cash revenue was, which was right under $50,000. Then just looking at if we had 75% of those students return, which is 248, and we charge, those were returning students, and we charged anywhere from $3,000 to $9,000, what the cash revenue would be on those 75% returned. Of course, that does not include the per pupil allotment, which is about $6,100. We then looked if we took new scholars, and 22 just came from those that were aging up. Those are 22 graduating seniors. So that's why I chose 22. Possibly we could take more than that depending on what level, depending once we start staffing and looking at grade levels where those openings are at every campus, every school, but we could possibly take many more than that. We can also possibly grow the program in kindergarten where kids are aging up. We know that a lot of times if they start in kindergarten, they'll continue, throughout their entire education there. So anywhere from, 157,000 to, almost 250,000 there.
Anna, can I stop you real quick?
Yes, ma'am.
These are strictly the money we're collecting for them to come. This has nothing to do with the ADA.
It has nothing to do with ADA.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Or per pupil allotment. This would just be if we charge them $7,000 a new scholar.
Perfect.
Okay. Or if a returning one was 3,000. That's all that is.
Perfect.
Okay. Good question, ma'am.
Was there anything to base that 75% number on, or is that just
a guess?
It's basically just a guess because we really don't know how many would be returning. We've had, many of them have already reached out to us asking what we are doing next year. We're also putting some information on the website in just an interest form. We're not taking anything. We're not giving any information to y'all. Have made some decisions there, and these are, as I said, just considerations. Okay. Some things that we do need to think about are, siblings. I know, as I put in some of the reports, they do give discounts for siblings. Returning students or re-enrollment, they left for a year, they're back, the parents transferred back. Families moving out during the year, district boundaries out of our district, hardships, provisions there, what something happened. Talked about, is there a question that we can ask on the application about a hardship? Little Lovejoy scholars. Also, if they come in and age up, what would we charge them, or what would we consider? And then just once again, criteria for admission. I've been gathering a lot of information from other districts as far as out of district transfers, and just trying to gather all that information for you to consider there.
You go back to maybe it's the third slide. So if I understand this right, Wiley ISD is charging $1,000 per semester per year.
A year.
For elementary, and then $2,000 per year for secondary.
Correct. And that was their last year. They have not made a final determination for this year, but.
So this is 22.
This was 21, 22, yes.
Okay.
But this is what they were thinking again.
Okay.
And some of them did put, as you can see, some caps in there.
So this is obviously an update for us to deliberate. So can you expand a little bit on this other things to consider tab? Just so we can vet out some conversation
Yes.
around those?
Exactly. Yes. Basically, let's say, like when I talked with Center, one district, and even some of the private schools, they might have where if they had, 2 siblings, the first one was 10,000, the next one might be 8, the third one might be 5.
So a reduction for multiple students out of a
Correct.
household?
Correct. Yes. And as far as,
On the siblings, I would also add, not just from a financial standpoint, also from if there is already
One in
an
here.
older child that is a approved Lovejoy scholar, does the younger sibling, is there any consideration for
Priority.
priority
Mhm.
in terms of the
That also.
Getting them in? Wow.
Yeah, getting them in priority wise.
And then families moving out of district boundaries, I know a little bit about that, but can you expand?
Well, basically, usually what happens if the family moves out of the district, usually let them finish, our policy says they can finish the semester. So it depends on when they move out. Would we let them finish the last year? I think if they're a senior, they can always finish the last year. But yes, so we would make some considerations there. If they also, we would look like as how we collected it. I mean, what if they moved out and it's November, but they had paid for the entire year, some provision.
So just to clarify, if you move out during a year,
Mhm.
you can finish the semester of that year, correct?
Correct.
So if I move out in the middle of the first semester, I can finish that semester without an application, tuition, or anything like that. If I move out, so I think also understand our local policy says if we move out during our junior year,
You can come your
you can
senior.
come back your senior year. You may be subject to tuition,
Correct.
but you would just fill out an out-of-district transfer
Transfer.
form
Mhm.
and pay whatever the applicable
Correct.
fee, tuition, or whatnot. Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
So one of the mindsets around this was potentially augmenting home turnover and allowing students who have been in our system, who we know, who we have a track record with,
Mhm.
to have an opportunity to stay
In
should
district,
they
right.
have a plan to move out of the district once the kid graduates. It would just accelerate that curve a little bit. And if we already know the student and we know their academic performance and their social performance, then we would be able to consider that.
Well, and you may, if they sell that house, we may get little kids in.
Yeah, augment turnover,
Yeah,
really,
yeah,
to bring,
augment turnover, yeah.
to bring new seats in. Can you talk about hardship provisions?
Yes, and hardship could be, you know, let's say we have situations this year where, you know, we've let 331 in, they're great students, and would we look at any type of discounts or anything, almost like a kind of a scholarship situation? Just things, these are really just things to consider as we talk about hardships.
So one thing,
I have a question whenever you're finished.
yeah, one thing to think about under the hardships also is things beyond the student's control,
Right.
like parental loss of job, maybe the breadwinner
yes.
loses their job.
Correct.
They can't afford tuition. Do we really want to not let that kid come back? Let's just say there's some kind
Extenuating
of
circumstances.
divorce situation, just things that are beyond the kid's control.
Right.
Legitimate things, obviously. So that, I think that's the purpose of that.
Correct.
And we do have some hardship provisions now, do we not? I think that we've had loss of job. And
Lots of jobs and things.
Okay.
Do we have we gotten best practices from other districts that have done anything with hardship provisions? I think I'm concerned, I wholeheartedly agree with the spirit of something like that.
Mhm.
I would be very concerned about the potential for abuse. And
We just have to refine it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Or
Some-
define
something
it.
There's
specific.
best practices that we could draw.
Yeah,
from
we
other
would probably,
places.
yeah,
I think
and we would
really
probably-
need to be careful about making sure that there aren't
Mhm.
people saying there's, or even just the perception in the community that there's things like that available just to be handed out. Obviously, that would never be done, but we want to make sure that there's checks and balances and controls around it.
Exactly. Yes. Other questions?
What was your, so criteria for admission? Can you expand on what?
Yes, actually we can. We currently what we use is we use a 95% attendance for the past 2 years. We also look at, they must have satisfactory scores on standardized tests and achievement tests or like STAR tests, anything like that, and no serious infractions for discipline on their discipline record. Now we can get a little bit more specific than that if we need to, but right now it's fairly open.
So currently,
Mhm.
a student applies to transfer in
Correct.
and they've not met these thresholds. Are we able to apply this criteria and be able to screen those kids out?
Yes, from what I understand last year, I think there were over maybe close to 450 that applied, and then we took 331.
Okay.
So I would think so. In fact, I have a meeting later this week with our ILT to talk about a committee that would look at these applications. So we would go through a pretty heavy vetting process where we're looking at probably some of the attendance type things, some of those requirements first, and then going through. There also are some information. So if a child comes from homeschooling, we would need to do some testing and those
Right.
types of things. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Follow up on the committee. Are you thinking that would be current staff members, like in the red building, or what are you thinking for the committee?
Well, I would think we would want someone from testing, probably Dr. Kinsley over there, from testing, and
I
also.
like the idea of it
Yeah.
because I know when we had one person doing that,
Right,
it was
right,
so
right.
much. I don't remember the number of hours, but it was just.
Yeah, it's a lot of
It's a
work.
lot.
And sometimes there are situations that, that we want to make sure that we are doing, making a good faith effort.
Yeah.
And to keep the integrity of the
One person
program.
can catch something someone else
Yes,
doesn't. I think
exactly.
that's great.
And actually, I started a checklist this past weekend of some specific things that we would look at.
I think that's a great idea.
Okay.
As we're evaluating the numbers and the options, Katie, I know this is something you talked about as far as making sure that whatever additional revenue we can bring in with these programs are not offset by additional expenditures,
Mhm.
like with the work hours that you're talking about and the committee members, and
Mhm.
if
I think
all of it needs to be taken into consideration, right?
There, and when I was viewing some of the out-of-district transfers, some of the things that it basically said denial could be if extra staff or an extra FTE had to be, we had to hire someone for that position. So if we only have, at Poster, if we only have, 2 kindergarten openings, if we have to hire a teacher, we may get that in growth. That's probably not one we're going to look at
Right.
to add. Does that make sense? So we'd take all of that into our staffing count when we did that.
So we're going to be able to vet out these scenarios for our presentation on the 14th so that we can see the
We're hoping, yes.
the financial impact, both from a state funding perspective and from, so we're talking about the basic allotment, but that's not all the money we get for all of these students, correct? There's additional funding we get.
That's correct. The basic allotment of 6160 is just for year one.
So can we see the total revenue when we make this presentation so we can see that additional funding that comes over and above the basic allotment, as well as the cash revenue in the analysis? And then I guess the impact on expenses I know that's going to be hard to do, but to the extent we
like
can.
pulling them by program,
Say it again.
like looking by program. For example, if they're, are you like dyslexia or?
Not necessarily. I want to know the expenses it costs to bring in these kids.
Okay.
So that we can determine what the actual net take is. That was a really squishy number
Okay.
in our previous decisioning process that was maybe not as transparent that I would have liked it to have been to make a
Okay.
decision.
Mhm.
And I want to have a good faith effort to help us understand what the expenses are looking like on the other side of the equation. Certainly the argument that there's none, that was the argument before, and that's not true. So.
Okay.
Will we be able to really analyze all the tiers, not knowing the kids and their needs? Is that going to be pretty estimated?
We can't do it with 100% accuracy. That's
But we
the
can.
question. We can base a tier 2 estimate on current percentages, and that's typically what we do when we're doing projections. We just kind of look at what our current enrollment is, and if the percentages were to stay true based on our enrollment projections.
Wouldn't be a guarantee, but it would be based on our current performance, what it would look like.
I'm more concerned about just the idea of we're just going to be guessing about how many we can get at any of these different tuition levels, right? I mean, the ADA edition is not going to be nearly as much of a band as whether we could get this many kids at 3,000 versus this many kids at 9,000, right?
You're right. We won't know.
We
We'll
won't
just
know.
have to make a good faith effort to understand it.
Mhm.
Or at least know what the different levels will generate, what the impact could be.
And just to be clear,
Yes,
we're going to be discussing different values versus grandfather, is that the right word? People who are already enrolled versus new enrollment.
Right.
And evaluating those.
Yes, ma'am.
differences.
Yes. Mhm. Right. Anything else?
Any other questions? Thank you for the update.
Okay.
Item 15 is an update on Lovejoy 2030 strategic planning. Ms. Cordell.
Good evening. We are so excited to have launched our Lovejoy 2030 strategic planning effort, and I'm thrilled to give you an update today. Looks like formatting was not our friend, but this is our wonderful committee. And here's a picture, an action shot. We are so privileged to have 12 students that are a part of this effort, 12 high school students, as well as parents, community members, staff members. We have teachers and we have people from the Red Building, and we are coming together to vision forward in regard to opportunities we have in front of us for our students. That is a live action shot of one of our panels that we had. And as we all know, and we've heard it in many ways here this evening, and I think the best way we heard it and saw it was in all of the student opportunity that we have here in Lovejoy, and just how successful our students are being because of the incredible education they're getting and the extracurricular opportunities they have. And we know that there is only one Lovejoy, and we are all leopards, and continuing to pursue and commit to that excellence is something extremely important to us. And as we hold tight to our mission, our core values, and our graduate profile, we know that we want to make sure all of our stakeholders are very much involved in taking our district to the next level and moving forward. As we do that, we are committed to continuing our legacy of excellence, supporting future-ready students, and of course, achieving financial sustainability.
We began our strategic planning process on February 11th and focused on making sure we really understood the committee role, our process, structure, and product, as well as reflecting on the future of work and future-ready skills, the skills our students will need upon graduation from Lovejoy High School. And then we prioritized student voice and understood some of the principles and parameters that we are working under as part of this effort. Our strategic planning committee is vital, not only to the work that we will do together in the coming months, but also as we carry this vision forward. And our committee is very committed to engaging and understanding that we need to honor the needs of the community and that this committee serves in an advisory capacity. And this committee will be presenting to you all, our Board of Trustees, here later in the spring. We are looking at making sure that any conversations we have and recommendations that are made align deeply with our mission, core values, graduate profile. And then we want to be champions for this effort out in our community and supporters of bringing this vision to fruition. We had a deep conversation about why, how, and what. This is Simon Sinek's golden circle, and we know that all excellent organizations always begin with the why. It can be very easy to move directly to the what and start talking about those things, but we very much have to know what is at the heart of what we're doing and what drives us, what that deep purpose is. And in Lovejoy, that is to pursue each person to personal excellence. That very much goes centrally for our students, but also to each of us as educators, and then as a community. This is a picture of my two Rugrats. This is Jacob and Claire, and there's a kind of funny story behind this because this was their pre-K graduation, which I have two younger brothers. My youngest brother had children pretty early on. He married his high school sweetheart, and after they graduated college, they had my niece and nephew, who I had lots of opinions about because I was not a parent. So I would say all sorts of things that I've now had to humble myself in regard to over the years. One of them, which is you don't graduate from preschool. And then when my own children graduated from preschool, you can see that I bought the photo package. So I have had to eat my words. But the reason I have this up here is you will hear in education circles that we are in the graduation business. And I agree with that only in part. We are in the hope holding business, and the way we go about our work has to be with great care and great competence because we are holding the hope of each of our individual students, and that is sacred and profound work, and it takes all of us working together to move this district forward and make sure we're doing this for each of our kids every day. We discussed this at the beginning of our process so that we really understand the magnitude of what we're doing and that we are coming together not just with the interest and hopes of our own children in mind, but the hopes and dreams of every child within our school district. And the way we carry that hope, as I said, is with great care and great competence. And so it's critically important that we can continue to pursue this legacy of excellence, ensure our students are future ready. And as we do that, we have to make sure we are have a financially sustainable situation so that we can continue to recruit, retain, and really attract and support the most talented candidates to serve our students. And I don't think those things are mutually exclusive. We can become more financially sound and have to become more financially sound, and through that work, become more excellent and ensure that we stay on the front edge of making sure our students are future ready. We also revisited as a committee our core values. Kids come first, one heart, one Lovejoy, and best today, better tomorrow. These core values will be extremely important to us throughout this process because there will be parts of this that will be uncomfortable. Anytime we grow and we move forward and make progress, there are periods of discomfort that lead to that growth. And through that, if we remind ourselves that our kids come first, and this is why we're doing this sometimes challenging work together,
we always are able to move that forward together in the right way. You will see that we are working in subcommittees. We have our big committee, and then we will have our teaching and learning group, graduate profile, legacy of excellence, financial sustainability, which we are so pleased and thankful that our financial sustainability committee, that committee of 40 people, is serving in that capacity. We have operations, future ready, talent acquisition, retention, and support. Our first meeting was entirely as the large group. Our next meeting will be broken down into these subgroups. And so we'll start getting into our subcommittees, those working groups. And we have some proposed future ready skills already. And we will start the work on strategic targets, which will be our goals, our strategies, which will be our actions that we will take to achieve our goals, and then key indicators, which are going to be how we will measure our progress towards those goals. Clicker does not like me tonight. You'll see here our next meeting is on March 21st, and then our final meeting is on April 5th, so that we have that deliverable to you all in May. This is a more detailed slide so that you can see specifically our timeline, process, and products. You'll see that that product of our first meeting is our future ready skills. We will bring that forward back to the committee on March 21st after we polish those a little bit, and we're excited about that quick win and having that information really to enhance that graduate profile conversation. And then, as I said, next time we're going to start digging into those strategic targets. I want to talk a little bit about why we had the Future Ready discussion. We know that the world is changing, the way we live, the way we work is changing. The way that I was educated is very different than the way our students are being educated. And it's important to understand that the world we will graduate them into is very different than the world we graduated into. So we looked at some research, for example, from Deloitte, and they're saying that only a quarter of executives are highly confident that their workforce has the right skills needed for the future. We know our students are going to need technical skills, social skills, analytical skills. This is from the World Economic Forum. The committee did some reading on some of this information, and then we heard from an industry, business, and education leader panel. We were privileged to have these different individuals share a little bit with us about what is happening in their field. We had Dr. Belita, who is president of educational technology for Texas Instrument, Earl Simpkins, who is a community member and Lovejoy parent, who is a partner at PricewaterhouseCoopers. We had Dr. Sherry Childers, who is associate dean at UNT New College, Andrea Stewart-Smith, who is an oil and gas executive, as well as a petroleum engineer. She is also a Lovejoy parent. And then Mackenzie Miller, who is the CEO and founder. She is an entrepreneur of Mobility Outdoor Media, also a Lovejoy parent. And it was really incredible to get their different perspective about what they are experiencing to really help frame our work as we vision forward. And that would be our live action shot of them sharing their expertise and knowledge with us. And then the real heart, obviously, of our district is our students. And we have 12 committee members, and 6 of those student committee members were chosen to be on our student panel. We were privileged to have Fletcher Booch, Sydney Legg, Noah Nadu, Pete Peabody, Sydney Simpkins, and Holly, I think it's Holly Chu, if I'm saying her name right. And our students were incredible. I could not be more pleased with what they had to share. They were so honest and profound and transparent about the things that they love and value about Lovejoy, that they want to make sure that we protect, preserve, and continue. And then also areas where they think we have some needed improvement so that we can focus our efforts and our collaboration in those areas. They were absolutely delightful. It was great to hear from them. And all of our students were just value added, both in the panel and then in their table work. So we are grateful to them. You'll see our students up there, another action shot of them sharing. You would have thought that this was like the 20th time that they had been on a panel. Very impressive and very poised. We have our working groups that we're excited to share. So our leadership of our working groups will be our administrative team. Dr. Tinsley and Sancy Fuller will be leading teaching and learning. Graduate profile will be led by Chris Mayfield and Holly Haynes. Legacy of excellence, Kevin Parker and Wendy Kraft. Operations will be Dr. Duplessis and Courtney Halpin. And Future Ready, Chris Coder and Mary Mullen. Talent acquisition, retention, and support, Anna Koenig and Marcy Hambrick. And then financial sustainability will, of course, be our Financial Sustainability Committee. We wanted to really lift up how this process will be utilized in our continuous improvement as a district. So you see in red there, that will be the outcome, the Lovejoy 2030 strategic plan, which is that hard work of our students, teachers, staff, parents, and community members. Once we have that plan, what we will do as an administrative team is look at resources, look at resource allocation, look at setting priorities. We'll plan, design, develop, move to implementation, and of course that evaluation, which that's where we'll use those key indicators, monitor and adjust along the way as part of that continuous improvement, and then make sure that we report out publicly on that process. Keeping in mind that this is a plan for 2030, so not every strategic target will be moved towards implementation immediately. But we are excited to have this product and then have that guide to move us forward. There are some challenges with strategic planning. Sometimes you mention strategic planning and the room just groans, and that collective groan can be because many of us have been a part of strategic planning efforts in the past where everybody came together. It was a great meeting. There was a lot of synergy and excitement in the room. And then you leave that meeting and you never hear about the strategic plan again, or you never see it again. It goes in some drawer. Maybe if you're lucky, a year later, there's some sort of annual report on it. Nobody knows who has the most updated copy, right? So we want to put some safeguards in place, some strategic safeguards to make sure that that doesn't happen to us here in Lovejoy. And we are strategically embedding those from the beginning. So we will always want to move from strategy to implementation. That's the whole point, is to make this actionable and have outcomes for our students. So when we have that Lovejoy 2030 strategic plan product this spring, that will then move into guiding our updated district strategic plan. So those some of those strategic targets will actually become goals in our strategic plan. And then, in our district improvement plan. And then our campus improvement plans are built off of our district improvement plan. And then as we move those goals forward into actions, you all will not only be updated on our Lovejoy 2030 strategic plan, as you receive those updates on our district improvement plan and our campus improvement plans, you'll see evidence through that process as well. And that's, of course, so that we achieve our goals. We went through some strategic planning principles as a committee that I think are very important to lift up, that our focus is on student learning and student opportunity. And as we do that, it's critically important that we are not short-sighted in terms of both the short and long-term impact of our decision-making. That, of course, we need to keep our three focus areas in mind: legacy of excellence, future-ready students, financial sustainability, and that we have to have this result in an actionable plan that propels us forward. And of course, we've got to build support, trust, and investment through this process, which means listening, transparency, and encouraging the input of our stakeholders. We also have some priorities. So of course, as I said, we've got those three focus areas. We also know it is our responsibility each and every day to provide a safe, secure, and well-maintained learning environment. We have to recruit, retain, and support an effective teacher in every classroom and an effective principal in every school. That it is critical to ensure alignment with our core responsibility of guiding and supporting high levels of learning for each Lovejoy ISD student, and then making sure that we continue to maximize opportunities to fulfill our commitment to our Lovejoy ISD graduate profile.
And then probably the most important slide out of all of this is inputs equal outputs. We can have the best process ever, and that isn't really the magic. The magic is in the people. And we have the most phenomenally supportive community, incredible students, incredible staff. And so I have no doubt that our inputs are going to result in some really exemplary outputs. And I'm excited about this work that we are going to do together. What questions do you have?
I was there, so I'm having.
Yeah. I would just comment, I was there too, and it was great. I thought the panels were really inspiring, and I thought it was a great start. Great start.
I appreciate the work coming out of the process we ventured into when we had started strategic planning previously, going into this one. This is executable and something that we can use. And so I'm appreciative of the approach and what's gone into getting it started. So thank you.
I think it's good. I'm sorry, did I cut you off? I was not there, but I've been keeping up. I love that you're trying to keep everything fresh, and maybe we've done something a certain way and we've had excellent results, but it can be a little painful, right? We need to continue to keep our eye on what's ahead. I'm dating myself, but I remember when like the internet came out and they told us in school, like, there are going to be jobs that don't even exist now, right? Y'all remember. So like, think of our kids now and what's down the line. So I love that we're looking forward. We're not just going to stay in our little comfort zone, although that's always nice. So thank you for leading that, and to the community that's participating, thank you, because it's really great work. So.
Thank you very much. All right, item 16, our executive cabinet members, cabinet reports. I just need that.
Good evening. So this month for our finance and operations update, we have a few items that we wanted to just kind of bring alongside some of these topics. Most of them we have discussed in one way, shape, or form already, but just to give some brief updates, we're going to discuss our progress on the zero-based budgeting, compensation grant that we briefly discussed earlier, a discussion about attendance, financial sustainability committee, and operations. So again, focusing on reframing our story and our 3 pillars. This is just an updated kind of milestone development of our budget for next year. So as we continue the work of forming that, all of the dates that are pertinent are highlighted here. So in February, you will see that we've been doing quite a bit of work this month. Particularly, y'all saw that we received our demographic update. So that's one of the big, the biggest revenue generator that we have to estimate. So the demographic projection that we received on February 7th gives us an opportunity to start to estimate what that would look like. We've also looked at some other things related to capacity to see how much space we have in our buildings, and had some other reports brought to you at that time. And during that time, we've also continued to develop the zero-based budgets for departments and campuses. So there's been a lot of heavy work around there, and I do want to thank the principals in the room and the department leaders in the room for all your work on that. It was really quite a bit. So they did a great job. We opened our budget entry portal on February 15th. So many of our bookkeepers are very hardworking in our district and have already entered their requests for next year, their allocations according to what we arrived at through the zero-based budgeting process. So I'm really excited about that. As we continue to develop these items, we'll bring a budget workshop to the regular board meeting in March, and that's where we'll begin to kind of put all of this together in terms of a projection. So as you'll recall, this may look familiar to some of y'all that saw the full demographic report, but what SDS shared at that meeting in February was a projection based on our current enrollment. Demographers typically use a low, mid, and high estimate. So you can see where we are. That green is the low, the blue is the mid, and the red is the high. So you can see we're pretty stable in terms of enrollment. There's not going to be a huge jump in growth, but there might be some development along the way. This is that same number with the addition of 300 Lovejoy scholars. So we know we have slightly over 300 today. So this is just that same projection built in with the 300 Lovejoy scholars.
Dr. DePlessis, before you move on to the next slide. So the last slide, when you say resident students only, if I remember from the demographer report, that included obviously residents, children that reside in the school district, but also the students of staff, faculty as well. They're included in the resident number.
That's correct. Thank you for pointing that out. And that is important because we have seen a slight decline in employee students. So essentially we're just yielding less students per employee than we used to. And so that's fairly typical because we have some tenured teachers, and so eventually their students graduate. So thank you for reminding me. So this here shows you kind of the difference between two different options. Just again, we're kind of pulling out different numbers to build estimates and projections on to see where they fall. So the blue line here is resident growth, and then projected out through the years on the right side. The gray bar is estimated using 135 Lovejoy scholars, whereas the red bar is using 300 scholars. So again, just looking at different scenarios and what that looks like. We also overlaid that with a capacity study that was performed by PBK to assess our facilities. So one of the things I wanted to know was, as we look at what those projected enrollment figures are, what can we actually house within our facilities? So what you'll see here is each of the campuses, their enrollment projection based on a 300 student Lovejoy Scholar program for all of those outward years. We've also did a utilization study and arrived at what is the most optimally efficient functional capacity that we can have in our facilities. So it's really kind of the max we can realistically put in our buildings. And so if we lay those accordingly through each of these years, essentially we can have enough capacity in our buildings according to that study to house that program continuing forward. And there's the secondary schools. So what we'll likely be looking at, and it's very typical as you get these pieces of information back from your demographer to estimate somewhere between the low and the moderate. Nobody ever picks high. You don't want to guess wrong that way. That's definitely not a good way to build a budget. So we'll be looking at somewhere between that low and mid projection to land on for budgeting purposes for next year. It's probably the most realistic, and then dependent on any action in the next month or so related to Lovejoy scholars, we would of course input that number into the total enrollment projection. And so that's obviously one of the biggest building blocks of our budget. And that's where we really started this work on the enrollment projections and capacity studies several months ago so that we could have the most up-to-date information to use in this process. So additionally, we mentioned some grants in the last month or two. So I just wanted to give a brief update. And I know Anna's going to touch on one as well. But we had discussed a strategic compensation grant. And this was an opportunity. It's going to be a very small grant, $75,000 to $100,000, but with a goal to be able to bring somebody into a district to help design strategic compensation programs. So because it's a big process to develop a strategic compensation program, this was an opportunity that we did apply for, because if that's something that we wanted to consider to be able to provide additional compensation in a strategic manner to our teachers, this would be an opportunity to have some resources to develop that program. The application was due on February 4th. We did submit for that. All I know is the interviews are supposed to be scheduled March 9th through 24th. So we haven't heard anything yet, but we did submit. And if we do hear something back, we will definitely bring that information to the board. The second was the teacher incentive allotment. So you might have heard of this from some neighboring districts, but we did initially, as part of our application to the strategic compensation grant, it was deemed more favorable if you were already looking at the teacher incentive allotment to receive the strategic compensation grant. So currently TEA has a lot of programs where you just kind of submit an intent that you're willing to look at it. So we did submit an intent for the teacher incentive allotment for cohort E. That application would actually be due on April 15th. So HR and CNI are kind of looking at that to see if that's even possible, because again, it's a lot of work to develop those programs. But if we were to proceed with that cohort E option and complete the application by April 15th, the data capture year would be 22-23, and the implementation would be 23-24, and the payouts would be 24-25. So it's quite a lengthy process. But as they continue to review those options, there's already a national board certification pathway that our teachers can take at any time that they so choose. So that's kind of already out there, and they'll be continuing to evaluate this as an option. For the mentor program allotment, this was a program where they provide funding through the state for mentor teachers. And I got really excited about that because we have some amazing mentor teachers. And then Anna's laughing because that excitement quickly dwindled. As we contacted Region 10 to put together the work to achieve the state funding, we do have our own mentor teacher program, but this would help us capture some state funding. But Lovejoy ISD was number 1186 on the list to receive funding, and last year only 65 grantees were awarded. So not really much of a shot for Lovejoy, but we definitely want to look at everything we can to see if it's a possibility. So I just did want to provide that update so that you knew that we do evaluate these things when they come out. We do look at them, but that is where that one landed. So on the attendance side, I know that's definitely a concern of mine and a lot of us as we look at what our current year will end at, because that's generally where I start my budget projections, is where am I going to end my current year. So this is some information that we shared at the beginning of the year. We started the year knowing that no hold harmless, as it was called hold harmless, and as it was devised in prior years, is no longer allowed according to legislative action. So we had done some projections at the beginning of the year based on the attendance rate that was used for budgeting purposes at 97% and those enrollment figures. And so we had provided an estimate early on in the year of about $500,000, a little more than that, in potential loss due to lower enrollment and attendance for the district in comparison with what was projected during the budget process last spring. And then we got excited again about a TAPR or TPAR adjustment that was issued by the state. So they discussed that just for the first 6 weeks of the school year, because our attendance rates were lower across the state due to COVID, that they would look at another option to give us a boost for that first 6 weeks by comparing our last 18 weeks attendance rate or our first 6 weeks of 1920. And whichever one of those was lower, which for almost every district would have been those last 18 weeks because of virtual learning during 1920, those attendance rates were high. But if we were able to achieve a last 18-week attendance rate higher, then they would adjust our first 6 weeks ADA. Well, do y'all remember what January was like? It seems like a million years ago, but it was not very good from an attendance perspective. So unfortunately, that calculation would have started to kick in at that time, and everybody's attendance rates were very poor in January. So essentially they said, well, that's not going to work. And we are waiting for more information from the state on what other mechanism they might devise to assist districts who have had lower enrollment and attendance rates. So we're waiting for more information. I anxiously await our commissioner calls every Thursday. Sometimes we have them, sometimes we don't. But we're waiting for that information to be able to provide a better estimate of what could look like the end of this year. So initially we stood to gain about $70,000 back of the $529,000 estimated loss from the first 6 weeks based on that adjustment. And I had commented a couple of times that we'll just see what they do if they offer that adjustment for future times. So right now at our current enrollment, 94% ADA, the loss could be anywhere from $450,000 to $900,000. And we're just waiting on that additional information so we know where we're going to end this year as we start to prepare for next year. Any questions so far? All right, so our Financial Sustainability Committee had their third meeting on February 8th. It was a really good meeting. We had a lot of information to share. We essentially focused on expenditures at that meeting. So we had already focused on First, the state school funding formula. Second, revenue. And then this was the meeting where we took a deep dive into expenditures. So we examined a lot of benchmarking information. We reviewed several different studies that have been provided to the district. And then we kind of had some breakout exercises. And the committee has done an excellent job of identifying things that they wanted to look at. And then we've kind of grouped those now that we have them into 4 subtopics. So those 4 subtopics will go into a deep dive in our next meeting on March 14th. And these are those 4 subtopic groups. So the first is revenue generation. The second is efficiency measures. The third is program analysis. And the fourth is legacy of excellence. And you can kind of see in there some of the subtopics that we just kind of grouped together in these categories. And so we'll have a cabinet member assigned to each one of these topic groups to assist in facilitating those conversations at the next Financial Sustainability Committee meeting. And so there are some pictures of all the work and the many, many Post-it notes that we have used as part of this process. So we always do kind of a snapshot key takeaway list for each of our Financial Sustainability Committee meetings. For meeting number 3, as we focused on expenditures, it was first that Lovejoy ISD as a district does expend more funds per student than most Texas districts. And then those expenditures have increased at a far greater rate than revenue over the past 5 years. And of course, some of that is because of our enrollment hasn't increased as dramatically as some of our neighboring districts. Staffing is approximately 88% of our general fund expenditures. And so that's obviously one of the areas we do have to assess to see if there are ways that we can bring about efficiencies. And so that's one of the things that we'll look at as well. The third key takeaway from meeting 3 was that there are some adjustments recommended that we could look at for Lovejoy ISD's current compensation to make it more equitable and try to bring positions within 5% of market. So while we want to do these things to really keep ourselves competitive and be able to attract and retain the best talent that we can, we know that there are also some efficiencies we have to look at. So those were the 3 key takeaways from the Financial Sustainability Committee meeting. And this is a list of some of the meetings we've already completed. And of course, the next meeting on the 15th will be those subgroup deep dives. And so they'll be bringing some information back. And on April 12th, we'll have an additional meeting to kind of compile the findings from those subtopic groups. And on May 9th, the Financial Sustainability Committee findings will be presented to the board. We also have an additional meeting slated for May 10th, so we may at that time review how the Financial Sustainability Committee function and any additional items we may want to look at or do with that group or to prepare for the following year. A lot of the members from the Financial Sustainability Committee, they were also invited to participate in that first meeting of the Strategic Planning Committee for Lovejoy 2030. And I was pleased to see quite a few of them take advantage of that opportunity so that they could also be in tune with what the district as a whole is doing as that financial subgroup to the Strategic Planning Committee. So as we shift to operations, we have had a few fun things going on. We have some playground equipment, and that's been really fun to watch. So I have some quick pictures for you here. The equipment did finally show up, and that's in and of itself sometimes a miracle these days. We were glad to see it come in. Unfortunately, the canopy, somebody forgot to order that. But the good news is we're going to get a bigger canopy. It's going to be later. They won't be able to get it until May, but because of that ordering snafu, we'll have a little benefit to the district in terms of a larger canopy for that playground. Once that's complete, we're going to wait until that's done to do some of the outside work that we plan to do as well, like fencing and things like that, because we want to make sure our placement is correct. We have proceeded with continuing to try to wrap up all the winter storm repairs from last year. So we did have some fun flooding at the press box in the last little freeze that we had. And so it kind of looked like the Poseidon Adventure, if any of you remember that movie, but fortunately the damage was fairly limited. We just dried out the floors, and within a day or two, the press box was back to normal. But the fire pump works really well there. It pumps out a lot of water. So we know that it is now functioning. So we've got that all back together. The practice field concrete work is completing up. A lot of that ancillary work around the athletic area is wrapping up. The detention pond that we discussed and had approval from the board to proceed with, those improvements will be continuing and ongoing as they wrap up the athletic projects as well. So that we have those improvements being completed up at the same time. So there are some pictures of the playground. So I really wanted to put pictures of the kids in there, but I don't know which ones I'm allowed to take pictures. So I just took boring pictures of the playground. But any questions on any of the finance or operations related items?
How realistic is it to think we'll have scoreboards for softball and baseball in March?
So we will have scoreboards. They will likely not be the new ones.
That's
So,
what I was asking.
yes.
I know we
Yeah.
have the existing, but have they given you any indication of when those might ship or?
So
what
the
that looks
last that they told us is March, and so we haven't heard any updates, and we know
We
it is
know what that
March.
means. Yeah,
So yes, unfortunately, I don't have a more specific update.
That's okay. I was just curious.
Yeah.
In case someone asked me.
Question.
Because they probably will.
Yes.
All good. Thank you.
On that mentor program where we were like 1,000 or something and they awarded the top 65, what are the criteria on that? Why were we so far off?
Well, and so there were a number of criteria. There were some instances in which we got points. So we did receive some extra points for being a smaller school district as an example. But rural school districts got extra points. School districts with a higher economically disadvantaged population of students received greater points. Do you remember any of the other points that I might be missing? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
Is that realistic that we would ever qualify? Is there anything we can actually do with that? No.
No, not really. Because they only took 65 last year. Even if they stay with that path, we're still quite a bit away at 11.
So we learned about it. Now we know not to worry about it.
Essentially, yes.
Good try.
We are always going to look at it. And I will say, just to answer on that variance from standard on the monthly financial report, we've been playing with a lot of numbers to see where we would be in our current year and looking towards the future year. And that was simply a calculation of the month of most private sector people would use burn rate, something like that, to look at. So we wanted to compare not only budget to actual, but budget to monthly spend. And we just used a straight 7 out of 12 months for that current report. So it's not perfect, but it's just one way that we can measure how far we are in our current
Give us
year.
more data to track as we keep moving forward.
Yes, correct. Exactly.
Thank you for the clarification.
Can I ask one more thing? About attendance, 94 is really low. That's the lowest we've ever been. What are you finding with not even peer districts, your peers that you're talking to that do what you do? What kind of attendance are they seeing? I know everything's weird right now, but is anyone as low as us? Is this specifically bad for Lovejoy, or is it specifically bad everywhere?
It is bad everywhere. Our attendance has always been more of a challenge in Lovejoy than our surrounding peers. So I think that's something we have to continue to look at. You know, the way that they do, waiver days and things like that. I mean, we worry about that in a way that most other districts don't, to be honest. We think about that because we know that attendance is so important, and that we do need to pay attention to it. So when they're looking at the sum of attendance counts over every day, divided by the days of instruction that we have. So we played with several different scenarios before we made that call. And most districts probably don't do that. They probably just call in the waiver day and don't worry about it. But we kind of looked at what we saw in past trends, what we think we might expect at different levels. And it just got to the point where it wasn't a clear path to want to try to make up that day. But it's definitely something we need to be looking at. And we've had continuing discussions last week about what we can do to bring that again up to the top of the conversation. Because we know in the spring there's lots of activities, spring break, those types of things. It really is important to make sure our kids are in school, not only for the money. That's not what we're here for. We really are here to educate kids. So that is really the primary reason why we want them here. But of course, it does impact us financially as well.
I think one of the hardest concepts for our community to grasp is that our district is funded by student on some type of state average and is no way tied to the value of our homes or the amount of taxes that we pay. I think that's really difficult for our citizens to understand, but the fact is that's how we're funded. So attendance becomes a major issue when we want to book in these holiday weekends and take that extra day of vacation, which I've certainly been guilty of myself, not knowing what I know now quite as much, but it has a pretty big effect when you add it all together and can make a huge difference.
Absolutely.
What's the difference if we improved 1%? Do you remember, do you recall what that
The
number
last time we
was?
ran that was about 200,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
200 grand.
Makes a big difference.
And that could be just a couple of days of the full student body showing up.
That's correct.
How many waiver days do we get? I know you pick like the worst. So like this Friday will probably be bad because people are going to cut out early for spring break.
No, they're not because they just listen to us
Well,
talk about it.
I hope they're not, but I'm also realistic,
After
right?
10 a.m. on Friday.
You're going to do that, go at 11.
By lunch.
But you know what I'm saying? The people that have already made their plan, how many of those days do we get where we can say, okay, throw that one out?
So there have been a lot of discussion about waiver days. I'm going to let Kevin talk about that because we kind of have the minute nuance in there as well. Do you want to give an update on the waiver?
We don't get waiver days, we get waiver minutes.
Oh,
And
sorry.
so we get a total of 4,200 waiver minutes. And we can use those, we can maximize those. We get 2,100 that we're allotted through professional development, which we put those in our calendar and we've used all of those. And then we get a low attendance waiver day, which ultimately is about 420 minutes, I believe. And then so whatever is left out of that, we can apply for, one of them being a bad weather day, which would give us minutes. So, but we're only allotted so many minutes per year. It's not necessarily days.
Did it used to be days maybe?
Used to be days.
Okay, so I'm not crazy.
Everything used to be days.
I'm
Not
hopeful everyone
everything-
comes to school, but I know there's people that, so I was just wondering, but we don't have much, it sounds like, so we really need to be in school.
It doesn't affect its percentage. There's not a way for that waiver piece to affect our attendance percentage.
Not
And
It just throws out the bad day with the
Improve.
stinky average, right?
But it's one day out of many days.
Right, just the one
So-
day. You could pick the Friday before spring break or
You
the,
only get to use one towards a low attendance.
right.
For your low attendance day waiver. That's why Dr. Duplessis will wait until the end of the school year to
To see
select
what
that
was the
day.
worst.
And Dr. Duplessis, one quick question, just so kind of we can all have the same idea of what we're talking about. I think you had said before that we lose about $50 per student who doesn't attend school.
Mhm.
And so if 200 students skip out or don't show up at all and don't get it counted as attendance, that's $10,000 in
That's
one day.
correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
We take attendance at 10, everybody. It's gotta stay
Find
till
lunch on the
then.
way out, right?
Yep. I don't know. 10.
It's 10 o'clock, people.
10:30, send them out.
We're going to start some work here that's going to get students in school when we talk about learning communities. So we've got some exciting things going on with professional development and some work we're doing with our teachers. You know, when we talk about high levels of learning, we really, our purpose here is to ensure that for all students. And the work of professional learning communities really can take us to that level that we can ensure that for all students. And you probably have heard about this. It's been around since the 90s, professional learning communities, PLCs, that terminology. And so part of what we have been working on starting in the fall with our principals and district leaders, and then recently with some of our teacher leaders, We brought in a gentleman by the name of Dr. Peter Noonan. He's a superintendent in Falls Church City, Virginia. And he has been leading the work of this professional learning communities for several years in a large district such as Fairfax County Schools and now in Falls Church. And Falls Church is a very similar demographic size to Lovejoy. So we thought he would really be a good fit for our teachers, bringing him in. I think this is a pretty powerful statement here. The most promising strategy for sustained substantive school improvement is building the capacity of school personnel to function as a professional learning community. It's essential that we invest in our people because they are the ones that are touching our kids and ensuring that we're reaching high levels of learning with our kiddos. So many times you might hear people say, well, we do PLCs. I'm going to a PLC. PLCs are really not a verb. It's just the way that we work. It's not an event. It's just the way that we interact and we collaborate and work together. And through that collaboration, as you all know, we grow when we're with others. We grow through that learning and planning together. So these are a couple of definitions here that it's a process that educators work collaboratively through action research to achieve better results for students that they serve, and they operate under the assumption that improved learning for students is a continuous job embedded learning process for educators. So it's something we talk about the importance of teacher planning time, that is set aside so our educators can come together and talk about what are our students' needs, what are you doing that you're getting these good results that maybe I could pick up as a fellow teacher. So those are the conversations that you're going to hear going on in learning communities. There's 3 big ideas, and you might notice some of this terminology here. The focus is on learning for the adult and for the student. It's a collaborative culture, and we all have responsibility for all students, and it is results oriented. So when you think about what Katie has shared with us is learning, collaboration, results, and she's added relationships and fun to that as well too. And if you don't have that relationship piece, this is not going to occur. And we do want to have fun on our journey with this as well. So when teachers collaborate, there is a structure to it. We just don't come together and, hey, how's it going? How was your week? We're very strategic in the way that we do that. So there are 4 questions that guide our work. It's what do we want our students to learn? How will we know if they are learning? What are we going to do if they don't learn? And how will we respond if they do learn? So if you look at that, we're hitting students on all ends of the spectrum there on planning instruction for what's going on in the classrooms. So last week, I believe it was last week, we had, or maybe a week before that, we had Dr. Noonan come back and work with campus teams. So our principals selected campus teacher leaders to come in because the intent of this was to us to start building the capacity so they can lead the work on their campus. So our principals were involved in these groups of teachers here, and this was led by Dr. Noonan. Our response was pretty impressive. We did a survey at the end on feedback from our teachers. What was new learning for you? What more questions might you have? What did you already know about learning communities? And that information gives principals and the district leadership insight on what the needs are when we talk about moving forward with professional development for our staff. We're working through some of the work that you may be familiar with Dr. Richard DeFore and Dr. Becky DeFore. Richard DeFore was principal at Stevenson High School in Lincolnshire, Illinois. And that high school has been, it was back in the 90s when he started this concept. And he is one of he was one of the leaders in bringing this forward because he thought it was so transforming for schools and for districts. And just personally, the work that I've been in previous districts, when we did move toward this way of working together, it was truly transforming because you're giving that ownership to teachers. They're the ones that are guiding that they're leading the work on the campus. So so we thought that it was a pretty powerful step that we needed to take here. And Katie brought this in back in the fall with our leadership team. So this is a book that we're using. So all of our participants received this book, and it's just really a guide to take us through the work that we're doing. So kind of next steps, we're going to be determining what are our priorities as a district. What are the specific conditions we expect to see in every school so that we have alignment? So if we're working together as professionals, what are those behaviors going to look like with all of us? What do we need to do to build capacity of people throughout the organization to build these conditions? And we're already talking about that. You know, some of the feedback I received from the participants recently is that they said, can our other teachers get this training? This is super important work. How can we ensure that we're exposing everyone to this? How will we measure the progress that we're making? So we're going to have to determine, you know, how are we moving forward? Are we meeting our priorities and our goals that we've established? What attitudes and behaviors are we going to recognize and celebrate? That's an important part of this, is celebration and recognizing the work that's being done. And maybe there are some practices and some leadership behaviors that are really not aligned with our priorities and our purpose as we move forward. And we're going to have to identify those and come to an agreement that maybe there's some things we need to shift. And then what do we need to do to stop? What do we need to stop doing to provide more time for implementation in this process in our schools? And that's something that I think is super important right now, because I do think our teachers feel at times that, okay, we're adding one more piece onto their plate. And so we've got to help teachers work through that so that they're not having that feeling, because this is not intended to do more. It's really, as the statement was said about collective responsibility, how can we share some of this responsibility together? So we're just starting the work. Learning in Lovejoy, the plan is that this is going to be kind of at the forefront of working through this. So that we can have all of our staff exposed to it, and we're super excited about it. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and I will be quick. This update here, basically this was the MOU you already approved, and so this just gives just some more explanations, the T-class decision 5, that the residency program support. And on here, as I said, the teacher resident stipends would be $20,000 for each student, teacher, or resident. The flexible funding for district implementation support, that's $5,000 per resident, and that's the one that we can use on a mentor or to grow the program or any other fees that we may occur that year. And then of course, C is the innovative staffing design implementation, and that's where they assign a technical assistant to us to help support that long-term implementation and sustainment. Okay. Questions about that? I think y'all heard that. And as I said, we hope to get 4 to 6, love to get 6 there. And then just for communications, we have started a Google Doc, just trying to collect everything that's great that's going on in the district. And Kim and I are working on that and trying to share that with coaches and fine arts and different departments so that we have all that extra information too, or things that are going on to the community. So some of that you might see and connect with Katie, and just some sources for communication and media and social media outlets. The next thing that wanted to talk with you about was just staff recognitions. This was last week on Bus Driver Appreciation Day. We were out there. It was a cold, cold day. It dropped literally about 20 degrees in 15 minutes. And just recognizing the staff and their hard work that they've done. I know today was my first day, my first experience, the Heart of Lovejoy Awards, and what a great day. I mean, when we walked in, one teacher was just taken back and was so excited that she was recognized. And just coming here to the little Lovejoy Scholars and in the pre-K program, just such a great day to recognize teachers, something that is special to me and something I haven't experienced in a long time. So appreciate that. Questions for me?
I do have a quick question. Can you tell us a little more about what you're trying to gather? Are you trying to gather how we're communicating now?
No,
and-
we're trying to gather events that are going on through weekly, just so that we have kind of a landing spot for them. So we created a Google Doc where it basically tells us kind of what school, what information, because we'll get pictures and then we're texting like, okay, who is this? What campus are they at? Just so that we can recognize kids more and the great things that are occurring.
Some more streamlined.
More
process.
streamlining process, yes. More of a process for it.
So how soon will that be ready? Soon?
We pretty much have it ready.
Okay.
So we're ready to
has that
share
been
it.
sent and they
We're going
go
to send
through
that to our campus principals. We shared that with them last week. Yep. All good with that?
I guess what prompted my
Yes,
question
ma'am.
is in the Connect with Katie this week, you said in there that you're gonna fold in now the messages from the board, I think, are gonna come and connect with Katie now.
Yes.
So I guess I was connecting this with
With that, no.
Okay.
We just need to know what's going on at the campuses. For example, one thing that came up, STEM festivals occurring. And of course, Cindy wanted to share all this information. And do we have a place where she can upload? She was kind of our guinea pig, where we can share that out and we have a landing location for it. So, so everyone can benefit and everyone's aware.
Clarify anything on the board minutes and the board updates?
Y'all know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
It's not a separate email now. It's now.
No, it's not a separate email. We included it, yes.
Right.
Yes.
Streamlining that.
So you're not getting another email about.
Got it.
So is that same form for boosters and all that? I tend to get people asking me, who do I send it to? So I
Yes.
just want to make sure
Question.
I'm
Yeah.
doing this the right way.
Great question, yes. You can
Going
send it
in the
to
right
us and we-
channels.
Yes, and we can send it to you too.
Okay. So if you send it to me, then I will send it to those people when they ask.
Perfect.
Perfect.
We have the unique challenge in our district
Uh,
that there are so
lots of
many
things.
phenomenal
Yes.
things our students are involved in and doing. And we want to make sure we
Yeah.
are lifting up and celebrating those
Everyone.
things so that our community is aware and that our students and the wonderful directors, coaches, and parents that are supporting them in those efforts see that as well. And that in order to do that, we need to have a streamlined process. So we're excited about being able to do that more effectively and more efficiently.
And also, you know, we don't get as many, we don't get as much information from elementary because the events are different. So we're hoping to, we talked to them and they sent us this past week.
Perfect. I love it. Thank you.
I have just a couple of things to share. The first, she doesn't know that I'm sharing this, and I wished I had the video to show you. But our post elementary students, they donated over $8,000 to the American Heart Association from their PE classes. They raised money through their PE classes by doing this. And so Coach Davis, one of the PE teachers over there, sent me a video, and the top, I believe, 5 students students who raised over $50 were put into a drawing. They drew the names out and they got to put a pie in Miss Haynes' face. And after working with Miss Haynes, I got more satisfaction out of watching that video than those kids probably got out of doing the actual putting a pie in her face. So it was really, but it was really on a serious note for those kids to know that they've done good for an organization and they've helped an organization enhance and better the lives of other people. It was great to see. On last week, on February 23rd, as you know, that was the day before the bad weather day. We had some weather that came through the previous morning, and we had 7 or 8 bus drivers who were not able, they live away from the city. Ice was a little bit more, they had more ice on bridges and roads, and they weren't able to make it in. So those bus drivers could not drive their routes that morning. One of the things that we did, we sent out communication to the community, letting people know that if you can take your child to school that day, please do so. Otherwise, bus service may be delayed a little bit. I think Ms. Cordell was the one who called Coach Ross that morning. And as you know, a lot of our coaches have their CDL and drive buses. And we had these 5 gentlemen, Brandon Jackson, Ryan Ledford, Sean Lewis, Will Yeager, and Jacob Sexton, hop into, put their capes on. They grabbed an ice scraper and a can of de-icer, started the engines, and they got on those routes. And they had a little bit of fun doing it too, because they knew how much, number one, how much it was needed. And most of them got the students to school pretty much on time. And I think the most impressive piece of data that we had was we only had 4 calls into transportation that morning about what and they weren't complaints. It was just letting us know one thing or another happened. That would not have happened if those 5 gentlemen and Coach Ross wouldn't have pitched in and helped out. But along the same lines, if you know Donna Holden, she is the ringleader over at transportation, and she runs a tight ship over there, and she did a phenomenal job. She and Mr. Coachman and those bus drivers who were able to come in, they combined bus routes. Instead of driving just one route, they combined them and picked up kids all over the district. And so it was just a complete team effort by that transportation department over there. And it made for another day of learning that was not lost, because we were able to get students to class. So thank you, Coach Ross, for doing that. Finally, we on one of our other weather days, we had bump up day that was canceled. And we wanted to make sure and we reschedule that day, because it is a good day for our students. For those of you who don't know, our 4th graders spend about a half day at Sloan Creek. Our 6th graders at Sloan Creek get bused over to Willow Springs for a half day. And then our 8th graders go visit the high school for a half day. And they just get to experience what it is to be, especially going towards the end of the year, what it is like to be on this new campus that they may not have ever been on, especially our 8th graders going to this huge place called the high school now. What is it to expect? Our first day of school doesn't need to be the first day. Our first day on that campus doesn't need to be the first day of school. So it just starts to get them acclimated to that day or to that environment. And so we have, since it was canceled on our first couple of bad weather days, we've rescheduled it for April 18th, which was which is our makeup day. We didn't have anything already scheduled for that day, so it was a natural, it was an easy way for our students to continue to be able to experience bump up day. Any questions?
Thank you.
Well, I get to talk about one of the best events. If you've never gone to any of the Special Olympics events, you're missing out, and we're ready to make some memories and celebrations. So we're ready to showcase that. It has been delayed because of COVID, and we're working through some return to play considerations that are really a little bit outside of Lovejoy's hands, because the state Special Olympics are requiring masks to be worn except during the event, except during your time to compete. And that would be for parents, for volunteers, for students. So it does make it a little bit challenging to work through that. So in the fall, there were events that were scheduled. They were canceled because of COVID. Right now, since the COVID numbers are better, there are local districts that are starting to offer events, but we're trying to work through how can we still have our student athletes participate and work through some of the mandates that Special Olympics and the state of Texas, Texas Special Olympics has put together. One of the pathways that we're talking about are some of the local events may not call it a true Special Olympics event, not using the terminology, but they're still getting to compete, which is definitely a win-win. So I hope within the next week we'll be able to have some dates to look at for our student athletes, because by this time of year, we would have already participated in bowling, in basketball, in bocce, and then now we're coming up in track and field. So definitely we're looking at track and field just to kind of frame as far as participation around Special Olympics. Really ages 2 to 7 are really our athletes in training. And so really what that means is they can go to local meets, but they're not eligible to do any area or state meets. But it's a great opportunity, because really when you think of our graduate profile, what a great opportunity to a healthy lifestyle, to be able to collaborate and meet new friends and peers outside of Lovejoy. Anyone 8 through adult really then are able to participate in the Special Olympics events. That's area as well as state. So we're excited to get started. Again, we're working through some logistics, through some of the restrictions that have been put on there. We're also trying to petition to the state to say, really, COVID numbers are down. Is there any consideration to reduce some of the mandates that are on there? So we are working through that. Internal options for sharpening skills. A lot of our students who do participate in Special Olympics also receive adapted PE. And so really there's opportunities during that time of the day for them to continue to work on some of the skills that they would use during competition. So we want their skills to be sharpened. Again, that's a great opportunity for a healthy lifestyle. Just like Coach Ross would have his coaches working with his student athletes, we're wanting to continue to do the same for our students who receive services through special education. And one of the other best events is the banquets. And so our banquet is on. We've not had a face-to-face banquet in 2 years. We did have previously a remote banquet and a fun kind of parade for our student athletes to celebrate them when we had some restrictions and COVID was at a peak, but we're excited to have a face-to-face event. It's probably going to look a little bit different because the committee's talking through the student athletes to be able to showcase some of their skills before we get to the part of celebrating them and awarding them. So we're excited because they have missed some of the events that definitely for someone, if basketball is your sport, we want to try to celebrate that and allow them to showcase talents and skills. Questions?
How many kids do we have participating in this?
We're gathering numbers now and it really varies. Around 30-ish, and I say that not every student athlete participates in all of the sports, so it depends on which sport that they're. Some students will participate in all of the events, and some will choose. I'm a basketball girl or guy. So,
got it.
Again, it will help us if we can work through some of the mandate pieces because really, that's a long time on the mass piece, and because they're normally multiple hours venues that you're there and at the event. So
thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello again. All right, good evening. Just a quick update to round out the evening. Wanted to give you a brief update on our May 7th election. We have 3 positions that are on the ballot, position 1, 2, and 3. And so we will be having election for position 1 mainly because we have 2 candidates, Julie McLaughlin and Randy Nadeau. So this will be held on May 7th of this year. Just a couple dates to keep in mind with regard to the election. Thursday, April 7th is the last day to register to vote. Monday, May 25th is the first day of early voting. Tuesday, April 26th is the last day to apply for a ballot by mail. Tuesday, May 3rd is the last day of early voting by personal appearance. And then the actual election day will be Saturday, May 7th. So we encourage all of our community to get out and vote. We also wanted to share with you some exciting things that are happening here within the district and specifically within our administration and our Lovejoy Child Development Center space. We had the opportunity to host our first collective, collaborative professional development meeting in what used to be the old Lovejoy Elementary Library. So this space had been partially utilized for the beginning of this school year. And we saw the opportunity to sort of transform it into a space that we could bring people together from our campuses for professional development, community members from our PTOs to our foundation. And so we have really worked with our custodians and our maintenance teams to get that space functional again, and are very excited. These are some of the pictures with the smart boards in there and all of our teams when we had our first professional development meeting in there. The reason why this space is particularly exciting to us is because it's a large, dedicated space for professional development and meetings. Even though we have lots of spaces within administration and within the Lovejoy Child Development Center, a lot of those spaces are utilized by our Lovejoy Child Development Center children. For example, the gym that we're sitting in right now is used during the day for those kiddos to come play in, especially when it's cold outside and they're not able to utilize the playground. So on days when we have board meetings and we set up in here, and we actually close off that space to them during the period of time where we have to set up. And so it's just kind of nice, the less meetings we do in here in terms of professional development, and the more we're able to do in the library, the more they are able to utilize some of these other spaces. It's also great because, we have such fabulous, wonderful, dedicated technology staff and custodial staff, and every meeting we host in here, whether it be for strategic planning, like Lovejoy 2030, or for our financial sustainability committee meetings or these board meetings, they set up and tear down all of the equipment for each of those every time. And so this space will allow us to contain the tables and chairs and technology in one space where they're not having to do that so frequently. And also putting less wear and tear on the actual equipment itself. It's utilizing a great space we already had available and budget neutral. So we like that. Anytime we can have that. We do hope to host a future board workshop in this space after we have made some additional considerations. And so we would like to kind of see what additional opportunities the space could hold for us. So in the spirit of collaboration, alone we can do so little, but together we can do so much. Any questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Ms. Cordell, any announcements?
Yes, thank you. We have been having some internal conversations about culture as we move forward, and one part of that discussion has been about surface culture versus deep culture. Surface culture being those things that we put on a PowerPoint. I had a lot of them in my PowerPoint, right? Look pretty fancy, our core values, our mission statement. But what culture really comes down to is our day-to-day actions, decisions, how we carry the work forward. And I do want to lift up just the remarkable culture that we have in our district that we are committed to growing. Kevin Parker just gave us a phenomenal example Wednesday of last week, the way our transportation department and our athletic department just jumped in and aligned our behaviors and our actions immediately with our core values, which is just absolutely remarkable. You can imagine an early morning call for a superintendent that says we're short 8 bus drivers is not a good feeling. And in that moment of heightened concern, to be able to call Coach Ross and him immediately, to hear him on the other end say, guys, we got to go, they need us. And I could literally hear people getting up and heading out the door. And knowing that most of our kids were going to be able to get to school on time because of just the absolute dedication, can-do attitude, and just relentless daily commitment to do what kids need is extremely humbling and absolutely remarkable. And we're so privileged to have people in our district that do that each and every day. I also want to lift up just the remarkable work that Cabinet has been doing, our principals, our directors, Dr. Matthey, Coach Ross, I see Bree over there, Bree Smith and Mary Mullen. They have been working extremely hard behind the scenes. You've seen a lot of the data and information that we've been doing to assess and analyze current state. What you haven't seen yet is the amount of work that they are doing to build a plan for a successful 22-23 school year that focuses on student opportunity and experience, that legacy of excellence, making sure our kids are future ready, and that we achieve that financial sustainability. And their ability to come together and collaborate and be flexible, be innovative, have conversations about short-term and long-term impact on kids in our district is not something I have truly never seen before. I've never seen people so dedicated to kids and willing to do whatever it takes. And absolutely no ego, and coming around the table going, what can we do to solve this and make sure we move forward with strength and excellence. So thank you all so much. It's extremely humble, and I am deeply grateful.
Awesome. Awesome. Great to hear. Thank you, Ms. Cordell. Item 18 is public comments related to non-agenda items. I believe we have one. So just a reminder, you have 3 minutes, no disruptive behavior, please. Give us your name and let us know what you're speaking to us about so we know that. And thank you.
Good evening, President Owens, Superintendent Cordell, members of the Board of Trustees and guests. My name is Jack Young. I'm a retired teacher and coach. I retired from Texas, and then I retired from New Mexico, and they won't pay me anymore to retire, so I live at Heritage Ranch. I'm presently working at Lovejoy High School in a 4-week substitute role in world history, and it's an amazing thing to work there. It is the finest high school I've ever worked in. I worked in 11 high schools, so that's a pretty good compliment. The students, teachers, administrators, and I have to mention Rodrika, they just make you feel so welcome and so appreciated. It's for old man, it's pretty nice to go in there and just the kids just say thank you as they walk out the door. I'm not used to that. I live in the Heritage Ranch, and so many of my friends out there have grandchildren who attend Lovejoy schools. They're all proud of the opportunities their grandchildren receive at Lovejoy schools. I've worked in almost a dozen schools in 44 years of active service as a teacher and a coach. Lovejoy is a great school. There's much work done by students, teachers, administrators, plus a great group of parents that make all this work. I know it's not an accident. I wish to commend you for offering in-house COVID-19 vaccinations to your eligible students and staff. I consider this offering to be smart, encouraging, and a bold public health offering to the Lovejoy community. My hat is off to you, and I thank you for your efforts to offer vaccinations for your students and staff. At the last board meeting, there was some criticism of the effort on the part of the district to vaccinate children on campus. I know everyone has a right to their opinions and freedom of speech and all of that. However, one of the patrons went over the line, in my opinion, when she stated thousands of children had been killed by the vaccine. That's just not true. It's not. I went home and I looked because I said, man, what a deal. What's going on? It's not true. I used research from World Health Organization, Statista, the CDC, PolitiFact. I literally quit looking to prove it not true, and I tried to prove it true. It's just not true. Thank you again for your great work educating and keeping our school children safe. This is a wonderful district. I'm so happy to be associated with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Last item is announcements by me, and I just want to echo some of the comments Ms. Cordell made. An effective culture is like a tailwind, and an ineffective culture is like a headwind. And I think culture is really something pretty cool when you got it. When you get it and you lose it, you realize what you had. But sometimes when you have it, you don't appreciate it. And my challenge to our educators, our parents, all of those involved in what we're doing here is to get behind the efforts that we're making. We're doing a lot of heavy lifting right now, and I say we lightly. Certainly our administration, our staff, Ms. Cordell, our educators, our coaches, every one of them are working hard to achieve some strategic objectives. We all know what those are. One of them starts with the F word, financial, and we'll continue to grow around that through our strategic planning and all those other things. But the future for us is, in my opinion, in my time in this district, has never been brighter. And I'm not much of a person to say things I don't mean or believe in. If you know me very well, you know that to be true. Our brightest days are ahead of us. Get behind us and buy into what we're doing and work with us. All of us are serving with humility. We're putting our best foot forward and the talents that we have to serve. And we have an amazing team. And our team is as much you as it is us. So join us in this culture development, all of us. Help us to move the thing forward and make our dreams reality. We will do it. You can either get on board and do it with us, or you can pull against us. And so thank you for the work that's gone on. Thank you for the work that's going to be done. And specifically, thank you for those little things that no one notices, that you do when no one else is looking, and that you probably never get thanked for. Thank you for those things. And with that, we are adjourned.